special meeting of the Mount Airy Planning Commission will come to order. And let's stand and do the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, you have in your packets minutes from our August meeting, August 25th. What is your pleasure there? You want to take a moment to scan it? Lisa and I have already gone through it and made some corrections, or we can defer this to our next meeting, whichever is your pleasure. You want to defer it?
Defer it.
Okay, let's do that, and that way take it home with you and take a look, and it'll be good to go. Okay. As Heather pointed out, we had a fairly light formal agenda for this meeting, so we thought it might make more sense to instead use the meeting time to meet jointly with council and start to talk about their questions of us in terms of content, recommendations, our proposals in the master plan. Mics are on. Yeah. Okay. I didn't. Thanks for saying something, though. So with that in mind, the purpose of this evening is going to be for that. Our next upcoming meeting date is actually going to be a combination of an October and November meeting. We'll have it on October 20th. Okay? The next special meeting will be on October 20th, and that'll be reactions to the next step and feedback from council. Okay? All right. So just to be clear, tonight is question and answer and response so that we can provide you with more detail about what we proposed and why we proposed it. And then this Friday, Heather, is it, that feedback from council members is due into staff?
No later than this Friday, would
No,
be appreciated.
hopefully earlier, okay? And then come Monday, your regular meeting for the month, get both the public and we'll see what changes, if any, you wish to propose. And then on the 20th, we'll be giving our feedback to that, okay? Possibly earlier. All right. Then, if there's nothing else that should come before us in this regular meeting, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion we adjourn.
Is there a second? All in favor? Aye. Okay. And then let's go into our joint work session then. The purpose is already stated. Based upon the feedback that we have seen in both the hearing that the Planning Commission hosted as well as the one last week that Council hosted, we're thinking it might make most sense to just go to the heart of the matter. And let's first deal with outer boundary potential annexation areas and questions in that regard. Let's deal with questions about our land use thoughts and recommendations, policy in that regard, and then perhaps rezoning recommendations. So let's deal with those heavier subjects, if you will, and see how we work through those, and then we can address anything else. I think we're about 10 minutes after 7. The idea would see how we progress, but to hold it to 10 or so, 10, 15 if necessary. Don't know how long it'll take us, but the important thing here is that there's adequate discussion and you get the feedback that you need. Okay?
I think at our meeting, there were only 3 outer boundary questions that came up.
Okay.
In the council meeting. They were, I'll say the Dobbs property, but all those 3 that are tied into that for annexation. The other one that came up was the Nill property. Mr. Nill raised a question about his zoning there. And the other one, which was raised in a letter that was sent to all the council, was on the Zeltman property. I don't know what order you want to look at those in. I think those are, I mean, My philosophy kind of was if nobody bothered to raise the issue, then I probably assume everything's fine and,
Okay,
stick with it.
all right.
Well, there's one more, 84 lumber.
Yes, you're right.
84 lumber,
Yeah.
okay. So
Thank
we
you.
got
I was
Dobbs,
sitting here trying to come up with a list.
Neal,
Dobbs, Nil, Zeltman.
Zeltman, and 84 lumber. Okay, any others?
I may have some as well, but let's, if we start the discussion, I think
Okay.
that'll predicate what other ones because I've got some concerns on some others.
I'll make a general comment, and then I'll invite members of the planning commission to, let's take Dobbs first, okay? But overall, our feeling toward the outer boundary area had at least a couple of key themes to it. One was we felt like unless there was a compelling reason to expand the outer boundary area, we didn't see the need in terms of the other values that were resonating through what we had heard in terms of feedback from the community and the last several years. And from a pure planning standpoint, we didn't see the need to further encumber existing infrastructure or to expand it. We had two possible compelling reasons, let me put it that way. We certainly didn't see a compelling reason from the standpoint of population expansion and need to annex additional land per se for additional residential space, okay? As we've said many times, and I think you're aware, we feel there's a priority in terms of development per se for our infill areas as opposed to fresh expanded area outside the town. So that was one general concern that I'll share with you. Another general concern we had was the character and personality of the town, the amount of open space we have, the character of our area and our town in terms of that open space and the agricultural presence and perimeter that we have. There's a desire among many of our residents and many of our members to preserve as much of that as we can. We also all enjoy and appreciate the small town character of our community, okay? Those were all things that played in our mind about how do we preserve but also support those values going forward. One of our concerns was potential encroachment from the counties, both to the north of us and to the west of us, and we're obviously seeing some examples of that. Another was maintaining that character, and certainly the properties that are there now on our outer boundary exhibit those characteristics. So in general, we were trying to resonate with those values and those points. When we got to Dobbs and when we got to Harrison-Lashire, we felt there were potential reasons and rationale for consideration of annexation. In the case of Dobbs and one or two adjacent properties, our reasoning there was the opportunity to support the next phase of Rails to Trails. Okay, our primary consideration there was if there was an easement opportunity, then that would provide us that could open that door. And obviously this first phase has been very, very successful, and hopefully the CSX portion on the Frederick County side will be forthcoming relatively soon, and we can start on that as well. But the primary idea behind Dobbs was, number one, additional parkland. We are based upon ratios, we have some deficit there. This would be additional passive parkland, not unlike Windy Ridge. The easement opportunity for that next phase of Rails to Trails could be an additional possibility. Anybody else want to weigh in?
I just wanted to kind of expound on that a little bit. That the conservation, from what we were told when we were given the presentation, that land is also completely fit to the conservation zoning. I know it's got the creeks and and the
It's rough land up and back there.
geographical. So that, in addition to that, it would encompass, and it's not just our rails and trails, as you know, the county is planning the rails and trails out to
Yeah.
Sykesville.
Yeah,
So-
can I add to that, Larry
Yeah.
Rush on it with.
Yeah, this is our contact point for the rest of the system.
Yeah, we met with Jim
Right.
Fitz about Dobbs, and he's very excited about Dobbs going out to Watersville to connect to the county, the big region of the county. So it's also another plus for Dobbs.
Bill, I have just one concern on all these properties and all the properties that are showing out there, like Harrison Lashir. You've heard a lot, maybe some negative comments about it recently. But if those properties don't appear in this document, we don't even get a seat at the table. We can't annex. We can't, Harrison Lashir is a perfect example of this, where if we don't sit down at the table with IDA, they're gonna do it anyways. And there's lots of things that are gonna happen, lots of traffic, lots of other things. And if it's not colored pink in our little map here, then we don't even get a seat at the table to talk about it.
And you've probably already seen this, but let's see, what page is it? Is it page 87? 87 and 88 is the chart form of the annexation and outer boundary areas. And then a few pages just past that is the fold-out of the map itself. So I was literally toggling back and forth between the two of those. Bob, good point, and that was also a consideration we had. Just because we made a recommendation for annexation, we identified a potential property in that way in here, that doesn't commit the town to do so. Okay, but it gives us an option, it gives us a consideration, and from that standpoint, we thought it prudent in some cases.
Yeah, I just don't want to take it off the table before we even get an opportunity to discuss it. It doesn't have to, and Zeltman is perfect, it does not have to be annexed into the town because it shows there.
Well,
But if it's something that interests us for the future, if it's not there, we can't talk about it.
It's there, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, the question
Yep.
that was raised on that one, since Bob raised that one, the letter we got on Zeltman was, first off, why are we including it? Because we specifically rejected it. And the other question is, why are we zoning it lower than the county is zoning it?
Yeah,
Both
so-
of which make some sense to me.
I can answer that, because I remember that. Actually, the first question, I probably can't answer. That's probably just related to what we were just talking about. It's there, so that we have a seat at the
Can I
table.
ask,
Yeah.
along with Peter, to get the rationale behind Zeltman Craft and actually the Western Bypass? So let me throw out a question.
well, maybe before we leave that, is there anything else on Dobbs? Okay.
Yeah.
One other comment I might say, and I can't remember whether it's which of the other two adjacent properties.
Spicer and,
Yeah, Springwood or,
yeah,
Springwood.
Jen.
That's
one of those offers ingress and egress
I think that's
to the area?
Through
No.
Nottingham, near Nottingham?
Yeah, actually, the
Yes.
concern is that I would have to be annexed in order, that can't happen, is what we've been told. I think the county said that may not.
Okay.
I remember on Streets and Roads, we had a discussion with the county at some point on getting access to these, because the property owner had come to us asking to connect to Nottingham. And Streets and Roads had basically made a recommendation of no, because we didn't want any non-town developments connecting to town streets, because we kind of, we don't get any tax pay. They're using our roads, we're plowing them for them, and they're not
Okay.
paying for it. Long and the short of it. Long and the short of it. And the problem they had was, without the annexation, they could not, or the thought was that the county, because I guess the length was too long for the roadways,
Okay.
that the county would not give them access to build back there without the annexation. So the concern I'm sure that the people in Nottingham would have is that by doing this annexation, this could in theory get them into town, which would then give them the, okay, now we can connect to Nottingham.
Well, the other challenge you have is, so in Nottingham, the developers left that one lot.
Correct, for
And-
this to some extent.
Right, and you got homeowners on either side who certainly have had an expectation that a major collector road would not suddenly appear between their two adjacent properties. I mean, I think that's reasonable, right? I mean,
Are you talking about Loxley Lane opposite Kings Forest Trail by the model?
It is right near there, yes.
Where
I
it's
remember
now
looking at that.
gravel?
Yes.
Right, because all those are actually lots on that side going down the hill.
Right, so my point here is,
And that-
it's just for consideration, my point here is that the homeowners who have, there's one house already on the southern part, right? Of where that gravel, we're talking about one.
It's the model.
It's the model, okay. So it's the model not currently occupied by a homeowner.
Correct, it's the model by Catonsville Homes.
Okay,
It's their model home, it's the big one. Before you, as you come up down the hill,
got it.
first right is King's Forest. You keep going, that big house that's there past the gravel is the model for the development.
So if we were to, we were to approve this as an annexation area, you would hope that the developer who owns that model, when he sells that model, you would hope that that developer doesn't pull a fast one and not tell that homeowner, oh, by the way, the land behind you is a planned annexation area, and you're gonna have a driveway, a street right next to you. You would hope.
Now,
I mean, I don't know if there's
and
a
when
way
Dobbs
to-
first came to light, the homeowners there, because people I know there, had said, this is why this gravel road's here, they're gonna feed county homes into the development here, and we don't want this added traffic. But when the developer decided for Dobbs' potential to be down the road more, I don't think there's as much opposition. At least that's what I'm being told. From people out from
We did
Atlanta.
get opposition in Streets and Roads, they did come to us, because there was a talk of a connection between the houses, and there was also a talk of running down behind the houses.
Right.
And then turning in and connecting
Yes.
where the houses weren't. So then what happened then is the people all the way down the street came in and said, we don't want a road behind us. You know, we have a farm field behind us, we don't want a road behind us with traffic.
Yeah, so
But
what,
I'm just raising the issue, I think.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong on this, Peter, but on that same meeting, I was on the streets, but didn't those people pay a premium, so nothing would be behind them, they testified? Like $20,000 extra for those houses, so nothing.
Well, I think they were premium lots, but I mean, you know, when you buy a house,
Get stuff behind them.
when I bought my house,
They don't know the
any
land.
land I didn't own behind me, something else could happen to it.
Right, right.
If my memory's correct, they paid a premium.
probably, isn't it the same developer that owns the houses they paid the premium, and now the same developer's behind them trying to, we can't answer that question,
Yeah,
Ken,
yeah.
and that's a good question, we can't.
Yeah, that's, yeah, I can't answer that.
But my question is this, so it sounds like we're willing to expand for housing, but,
We have a question about actually putting housing there.
well, clearly
Well-
the only reason why the owner of the properties wants to annex is they're gonna put houses there. They're not gonna build parkland. Now, we know that rails to trails is the benefit to the town, but if we leave this in the plan, we've gotta figure out a way to let those homeowners know that this might happen, and more importantly, we gotta make sure the developer, and I'll be blunt, cause I always am, doesn't pull a fast one. And whoever he sells that house to, hey, you know what, there's a road that's gonna come through here.
Aren't people supposed to look at the plan? Isn't that what gives people notice?
They're supposed to, very few people do.
I
but
mean,
they're-
If
But
it's in the
that's
plan,
like
everywhere.
that could be said for almost anything
Yeah.
that we're talking
I mean,
about
yeah.
in here. I mean, in all honesty.
One other consideration too, I know Doc Full up on Twin Arch Road has some housing that he's been trying to get done for years. You know, about once a year they come in here and they come into a planning meeting and talk about it. And I just don't wanna see somebody jump the line here because they got a piece of rails and trails property.
I think this is all about going through the process with staff when you're, you know, we have that whole mechanism now that's in the plan and then
Right.
changed with the ordinance about
Well,
how
there's
people
no-
get
yeah,
in line.
There's no water for any. there's
Yeah,
no
I
housing
don't think
anywhere.
it's like, and the thing is like this development, it's not, any housing development, which would be very small and clustered because it's conservation.
Yeah, that's what I wanna know, what
Oh,
can we do
yeah,
in conservation there?
it would be very,
Well,
you know, it'd be.
That gave
Spread
us,
out.
that helped us ratchet down the whole ratio.
Yeah, so it would be clustered housing and mostly, you know, open space.
Yeah, from what I'm told, most of this land is conservation
Right.
open space. Very
So-
little that'll be.
So what can, I mean, how many houses will be?
40.
Remember?
But they're
The yield-
talking about,
It's
The yield is about 40.
Yeah.
about 40.
40
And-
houses.
That's a lot of traffic.
And so everybody knows, this
If
was,
you're talking 10, that's,
Yeah.
It's 80 cars.
yeah.
Well,
and
you
everybody
know,
knows this was tried before. I was on planning, I was on
But we don't
planning. with this.
Dobbs
necessarily
is
have to
123
approve 40.
acres,
Yeah, so
but
40
at
houses.
3 acres a home, it ratchets it
But it
down to
would,
41.
yeah, but it would be clustered to the
Yeah,
3 acres.
that's
when
right,
around
Because,
it.
that's right.
because you can't use all the
Exactly.
woodlands in the back.
But I don't think that we are required to approve 40 houses just because conservation says 40 houses. I mean,
No, I'm just looking at
So
the actual
definitely no
number,
more
worst case
than-
scenario. If it's 10,
Right.
that's one
No, I-
thing, 40 is a lot more
I mean, I
houses.
agree,
All right.
I agree, but definitely not more,
And
but
I-
possibly.
And that's why I think it should be included in the plan, is simply because then it's something that we can talk about in the future. If
Right.
it's not in this plan,
Right,
you're not
Yeah.
talking
Exactly.
about it.
That's true, because we're not saying we're annexing it, we're just saying.
right, it's just
Yeah.
We'll think
protection.
about it.
In
Come to
place,
us.
correct,
Right,
Yeah.
When it best behooves the town to do it,
right.
you know,
yeah,
if.
right.
Okay,
In some of these meetings, we've talked at previous planning meetings where the developer was there talking about docks. His comment was, and don't quote me, was, all they're looking for is future annexation on the map for future consideration. In exchange, work out access to this land. for
That's my
our
understanding as well.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty
I
fair.
think that's pretty fair. I have to say, I think that's pretty fair.
I think that's fair also. That's why I'm very much for this personally.
So can I ask the council by consent, because I think what will help the planning commission is if the council by consent doesn't have an issue with it, then we keep moving on.
I don't think I have an issue with
I
it.
don't have an issue with it.
So I think we move on.
Yeah.
okay. All right, so that was our rationale there, and I thought, the access questions and so forth are very, very well taken. And that's, the Streets and Roads Commission is a resource for you in that regard, too. Okay. What do you want to move to next? Do you want to move to?
I'd like to go to Zeltman Craft. Zeltman Craft
All
for
right,
the whole
you
western.
want to leave Carroll County? or-
I
Does it
don't
matter?
think the county matters a whole lot. I mean, I have no problem with Chris's Zeltman Craft, although nobody raised an issue with Craft, I don't think. Only
Did you
Zeltman
want
and
to touch
Craft.
on NIL first before we jump?
Yeah, that's the only reason I was asking about NIL.
Only because
That's
I
fine.
wrote
The only
down.
issue that came up to us was Mr. Nill came and said, I think that the county has them at mixed use, and we have them, I guess, at conservation, and he
Yes.
had talked about wanting mixed use.
And-
To me, that did seem.
Well,
like
actually,
one should be-
he asked something we hadn't heard before. He said, how about mixed use or
10 years
our
ago-
office park?
10 years ago, we asked for conservation.
Yeah,
I think, as I
yeah.
recall, that was why we broke with the county 10 years
Yeah.
ago, because he wanted it. We said, okay, we'll go on. So, but it sounds like now he wants us to be consistent with the county as
Yeah,
mixed.
his
Well,
quote,
basically, I can tell you, and this goes for all, and it's just, it was a general, because we had all these discussions and we had people come in and testify. And other than this one lot that I can't remember the name of, that's over on the other side of Windy Ridge that could actually provide an entrance, other than that one, right, regular. The reason
Regular.
that we kept them at conservation was
Oh,
so.
okay, you're talking about Zeltman now.
I'm talking about the Zeltman Craft.
No,
was-
we're
No, we're
talking
Nil.
about- we're
And
talking
They're
about.
talking about Nil
And Nil,
first. And Nil,
all of them,
okay.
all of them.
Okay.
Basically, all of the future
All of them.
annexation
Oh,
areas.
right, okay, okay. That's true,
Let me
that was a
talk.
common theme.
The reason is
Yeah,
that when they are annexed, they can be changed and zoned up. But when they are annexed, it would be very difficult for us to
zone
zone
them
them
down.
down.
Very
That
good
is the
point.
reason.
That's right.
Okay, that's the,
That's right.
Very
Bottom
good
line.
point.
Thanks for adding that.
Very good, but that's a very good point.
It makes
right.
sense.
So they come
Yeah.
and they want to be mixed use, and at that point, we have mixed use, and it's all good, and then he can be upzoned to
So
mixed
is
use.
Mr. Mill aware of that?
I don't know if that was like.
Mechanism?
more than likely not.
well, we
So
should
maybe-
certainly,
I don't think
certainly
so.
notify him that.
That if he's aware of our rationale and that, that
Mm-hmm.
it exists for him for someday, he may be okay with the conservation.
Because I also say, we need Mr. Nill to make this Doubs
Right.
rail trail work.
Yes, yes.
We
That's-
need, a section there.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
could we-
certainly.
Since it doesn't sound like there's a lot of objections to Leslie's rationale, can we make sure staff sends a letter to Mr. Nill and see if that's acceptable to him?
Yeah.
I mean, whether we're legally
that's fine.
obligated or
Yeah,
not,
this
doesn't
is
matter.
Warfield.
We need to do that.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we had, yeah.
Okay,
we-
Warfield would be part of that as well, that
Yeah,
same
if we-
consideration.
If we didn't have a clear
Same
vision
rationale.
and an immediate decision that we were gonna annex a property in for a particular reason, like, oh, we're gonna do mixed or we're gonna do residential.
We left
we
everything in
just
case
left
of
it because
conservation
they
unless
can
we have a
always.
real plan for it.
Yeah, if we don't have a plan, then they can always be zoned out.
I don't think that's clearly understood by the property owners. I think,
Yeah,
their
that's-
immediate concern was, it's a
And
down
I think
zone.
that's good to explain that
It
to them
is.
and say,
That wasn't my job.
we think by the time we annex, we're gonna have a zone that you're gonna like even better. And if we bring you in as this, we can move you to that, but if we bring you in as something else, we may not be able to move you to that.
Can I, why is Warfield in the plan?
talked to, I don't know.
Why is it-
Nil's always been there, we get that. Why is,
Nil's been there a long time.
right, and well, let me,
Warfield.
is the council
Right across
consent,
the street.
the council's consensus on Zeltman seems to be we're fine, right?
I mean, Neil,
Well,
you
I
mean,
mean, I still.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
Honestly, I question why we still got it on plan.
I'm sorry,
We can reject just on Zeltman. We
No,
can
I'm sorry,
reject it.
I've got a little speech on Zeltman, but I'm sorry, I apologize. Nil, it seems like council consensus on Nil is.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yes.
As long as he's okay with the zoning, you know.
So we'll ask as an action as staff to send a letter
okay.
and or explain to.
Or just call them on the phone or stop by some
Explain
tomatoes
to
and
'em.
talk.
Okay.
Rationale.
Yeah, I need to go to get some apples. His son's there, so
So could, sorry, Warfield, why is that in the plan? Why are we expanding?
I don't know, do you know?
What's the rationale behind expanding? What does it bring us and why are we adding more land? That bring,
did they make a request?
Warfield was
No.
always.
Was that in previous plans?
I'm looking at the
I don't know that it was.
2003.
Yeah,
From low density.
it was in the 2003 plan.
All right, that's why it's there then.
I have the 2003 plan
Was it?
here.
Yeah. I mean, it's a big parcel that's contiguous to town.
I was thinking it was
It's,
proximity to Harrison and LaShire, and a concern that
Well,
that
it's right
might
up
become,
against Nell, so
might
it's the
become
other
a
side of the
development
street
target.
from
It's
Nell.
across,
Yeah.
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 but
I
my,
mean, kind of, when you look at the puzzle, it kind of fits plugging that hole.
but why do, but my, so here's my concerns on, because it'll be the same concerns I have with Zeltman Craft and the whole Western Bypass.
So it's,
The town survey over and over again says, we don't want to grow, we don't want to grow, we don't want to grow, everything, all right? We have no additional water.
Mhm.
You know, if Harrison this year comes through, we'll get some water. Okay, got it. I understand the rationale that, okay, well, we put it in the map, we showed as conservation. Okay, but if we go back to the history of Zeltman, which some of us here lived through, if it's in the plan, it can be annexed. Warfield will never annex unless he gets to R2 or better. Zeltman won't annex unless he gets R2 or better. Why we're adding Warfield in here when it brings no benefit to the town? None that I can see unless it's explained. Why are we adding additional land when we don't have the water? And the citizens have told us clearly, and again, we'll get to Zeltman in a minute, that we don't want to expand. We don't want more housing.
Yeah, I think it was just in and it stayed in.
So
Yeah,
I would
we're
like,
not adding it. I mean, it was in the
it was in
2003.
so I'd like
Sorry.
Warfield pulled out. I see no reason for it to be in there, but that's just me. I see,
I mean, it doesn't hurt by being in there.
it does. Yeah, I'm sorry.
And how is that? Because we don't have to annex it.
It
Well, let's see
hurts.
what it says.
Yeah.
It hurts because, well, Zeltman's there, we don't have to annex it, and then we had this gigantic democratic process, which was a really good process. Well, it's there, okay, let's annex it. You had a town council at the time that decided on their own, without listening to the citizens, they were going to annex this because it's in the plan.
I see, I wasn't aware of that, okay.
Yeah, and I'm going to use the same argument in a minute for Kraft and for Zeltman. I mean, a lot of our plan here refers to the surveys. Surveys over 2 different surveys are very clear to us.
One,
Don't expand for housing. We
Most of
don't
it is.
want it.
one thing on Zeltman. Zeltman was not just the annexation of some land. That was a land swap, and there were a whole bunch of other things. You know, a surface water system, and there were a whole bunch of other issues with Zeltman. And the reason that I don't want to see that go over there, I back up to Rising Ridge Road. I would like to see Rising Ridge go all the way through Prospect.
Let me
Well,
hit that one just
yeah,
a minute.
before
Let me
we go there.
hit, because we'll go, but I mean,
We're on
I would,
Warfield, right?
I would like Warfield removed. I see no benefit or rationale other than it was there in 2003, and the citizens have told us, don't add more land for housing.
However, if what Bob said is correct, which I'm sure it is, that unless it's there and we show it on our plan, we don't have, if the county decides they want to do something different to it and
Well,
But what could the
that-
county
there- well, there
But what
was a
could
bit
the
of that.
county- It's already zoned ag. The county can't develop this into R2 or R3 housing unless they have access to water and sewer. So without water, without sewer, you're not going to have large development. It's not going to happen. It's against the smart growth principles of it. So I've heard the argument before, let's put it in a plan and control it. And that was the argument before. And blew up
Right,
on us
right.
in the whole Zeltman deal.
Right, and what he's saying is we're not gonna annex it anyway below R2, so we're not gonna
Why
annex
would we
it.
go ahead?
Yeah.
Why is it in
Okay.
there?
Well, I do think though, if you have a say, if the county wanted to change the zoning, you at least have a say at the table. You at
We
least
really
can-
don't. We could tell the county, hey, please don't do that, whether it's in our plan or not. It doesn't matter.
So in part, what we're saying is, we probably have more of a legitimate concern about Harrison LaShire and not acting on it ourselves and seeing the county do so than we do with Warfield.
Harrison LaShire, as we know, the town council was in active negotiation with
Well,
the
and we've been-
IDA.
And the difference with Harrison this year, we've been told the county has spent $30 million on that piece of property, and they are going to do something with it.
And they're gonna give us how many acres for,
80,
They're gonna give us-
85 acres.
that's part of the deal, so
But-
that's a different deal.
And that's a real deal in Harrison LaShire. Warfield's just open space to be developed.
So-
Okay.
Just so I'm clear with Harrison LaShire,
I
they
don't
really
think I
can't do
do
much
either.
without our sewer.
Okay.
Is that right, or is that not right?
They-
With that much land and that water, the argument was they could build an so if there's enough there that they could do an on-site facility.
Okay.
They could, you know,
It would be
if they wanted
extremely
to.
expensive, but they've spent $30 million on
They
a
already
piece of
have
property
spent.
right
It's-
now.
it's a major loss
They are
leader at this
going
point.
to do something with it.
Yeah, well,
And
they
that's- I
already
mean,
screwed
that's,
up big
There's a
time.
clear, well,
You know,
our rationale for Dowds,
it's different.
our rationale for Dowds was there's a quid for the town, Rails to
Right.
Trails. Our rationale for Harrison LaShire is there's a huge quid in it for us. There's a well and 80-something acres. Warfield,
True.
there's no,
So I guess there's an argument that maybe down the line when he wants to get an X, there'll be something there for us. I don't know
Yeah.
if there's any wells on Warfield or not.
but again, I fall back to
But,
what the
but what
town's
if
told
they're,
us.
what if they do find water on their piece of property and they will negotiate with us and give us some land for park space or, I mean, you at least have some negotiating with the county. You don't have, I mean, you can say, oh, we don't want you to do that, but you don't really have any negotiating.
I think once you get past Harrison, assume Harrison LaShire does happen. We don't know if it's gonna or not. I assume once you get past Harrison LaShire and maybe if Doubts ever happens, our sewer, we're tapped out sewer capacity anyway.
And I agree with you to some extent. That doesn't mean that we don't solve problems. Right now, we have a water problem. Pretty soon, we're gonna have a sewer problem. Are we just gonna sit here and do nothing about it, or are we gonna solve the problems? And that's not really master plan
City,
stuff.
we are actually talking about annexing some property.
Yeah. Well,
Not just
you've
sitting
got,
here,
you've got approximately 350,000 gallons a day, you know, before you hit a hard stop. The question becomes, what's the most strategic and best use of that capacity?
I don't think it hurts us being there. I agree with Patty. I don't think it hurts you being there.
It-
And you're correct. We've had 2 surveys that said no more houses, and we get it. Okay, so in order to build any more houses, the first stop is right here with you guys.
But, you know, we've also,
And the second stop is with us.
We-
So I don't think you're gonna end up with houses on Warfield.
we've also seen surveys showing that people would like some level of a buffer around the town.
Right.
And by putting an annexation peg here and listing it as ag or conservation or something, that's a step in that direction. It gives us a little more control, doesn't give us a lot of control,
But-
but it gives us a little.
But that was the argument used with Zeltman. The argument used with Zeltman was, oh, it's a buffer, oh, it's not gonna, that was the
If
argument.
that called for development right then and then, right then.
But
There's nothing going here.
right, but it's still I get that point of it, and then I'll just say one more thing and then I'll stop. The citizens have told us, stop annexing, we're done with growth, we don't want to do this. Let's listen to what they've told us. They've told us in 2 surveys, stop doing this. There's no benefit to us other than,
None of these properties we've talked about is for the reason of growth.
but that's what will
But
happen.
what he's saying is, what's Warfield's reason?
That's what will
I mean, I
happen.
can understand that.
And
the only way they'll
Look at some of
annex-
the
And
others,
and
we
there,
have a reason. What's the
exactly,
reason?
and there appears to be a difference there. It's
There's
more,
no reason.
it's more the buffer concern than it was of anything.
But
But
you
it
also, but
won't-
also logically,
There's no
to
quid
follow
pro quo.
your path, Chris, logically, we're out of water, we're out of sewer, and he comes on and says, hey, I want to bring this into town, I want R2. Well, we can't help you, we
You
don't have
say
any water
no,
sewer.
you can't help me.
What can be done? Seriously, what
So
could
why
be
have
done?
it here?
But what could be done? So again, what we're saying, what Patty's saying, what's the harm in keeping it there?
The
If
harm in
nothing-
keeping it is it could be annexed. If
And
we
then-
don't put it in here, it can't be annexed.
Okay, and if
then-
it does get annexed, then what? Assuming we have no more
And
water,
you
no more
know,
sewer.
you-
But they're not gonna annex, Tony, no one's gonna annex. No one's gonna annex unless they can build.
Okay,
They're just not gonna do it.
okay,
They're not gonna annex because it's buffer space or farmland.
Right.
There's no economic argument.
okay. No, I agree with you, believe me, I agree with you, but logically, without water and without sewer, it doesn't matter whether it's on the map or not.
At what point do you stop dropping pink dots in?
Are they still farming
box.
Moorfield?
Yes.
Well, let me give you
Yes.
this scenario, because we have seen
They are.
something similar to this happen around the edges of town. Let's say the house that's on that property, the well system fails, gets contaminated, they can't use it. They come to the town and they say, I'll tell you what, let us hook up to water and sewer, you annex the property, obviously, we want the water and sewer hookup, it's only one house, so it's not that a whole lot. They pay the freight, and they come in as, you know, as some type of ag level, where they really can't build on it, but they can keep farming it in the town. We get an outer buffer control, and they get one house with water, you know, 250 gallons a day.
But
I'm not saying
okay,
it's gonna happen, but we have had people on the board that
Right.
come to us with that request.
right, then at what point do we stop dropping pink blocks in here? Let's just keep going. Let's just color the whole thing under that
Well,
argument. Let's keep
well, it
going.
has to be
No, no,
contiguous.
no, I
It has
think-
to be
Well,
contiguous.
we
Yeah.
can make it.
If you look at this map, the pink
Understood.
blocks that we do have are adjacent
Mm-hmm.
to our property. And the whole rationale behind it was that we wanted some buffer. And I understand what you're saying, but
There is no buffer.
I don't, there is, we don't have the water now. You don't know what can happen, even in a 10-year period of time. You don't know what can happen.
More to the point, the sewer. You
That,
know,
that's a hard stop.
I mean, that's gonna be quite the hurdle to jump over.
Right, but
building
I
a
just
new sewer.
proposed use that would be virtually no water and sewer. I mean, we have had people, we just had a property that we just agreed to run water to that we're not annexing, because they couldn't get any water.
And the Maryland Department of the Environment said, you're doing this
Yeah.
and you're doing it now, and that's
That
what
could
we
happen,
asked.
that could happen on D. Their well could dry up, they could, you know, something could happen, and MDE could come to us and say, hook them up, and we would take one on if they did that, but we might say, hey, you gotta come in as ag, you're gonna be a buffer. And they got no choice if they
I-
wanna live there.
I think I
understand what
think
you're
I-
saying, Chris, and you make,
I think I stand alone. I mean, just so.
I think you make some great valid points, but again, I don't, with
I just
Patty-
don't see, I just don't see the harm in keeping it. I understand what you're saying.
The
They're
harm
valid
is-
points.
the
I
harm
don't
is
see any harm at all.
the harm is it goes against what the citizens have told us they want. And they
No, the
told
next
us-
No, I
thing would
don't
go
think so,
against the
because the
it's
citizens
not
are
in there,
Anything in
saying,
there in case something happens in the future is not necessarily going against, I mean, at least from my perspective, actually annexing it would be doing something.
If it's not there, it can't be annexed. It's not in the plan, it can't be annexed, and then that meets what the
but
citizens
the
have told
survey
us.
said they don't want to
Residential
annex something for more residential growth.
That's
They
the
did
only
not
use.
say
So look,
you can't annex something if, say, it's just one house, and then we get benefit, you don't know. You
let me
get
run down
benefit
that
of
last
our
line of
children,
argument, then I'll be
so.
quiet, because I've had more than my time. Let's take that scenario you just pointed out where, okay, can be annexed for a single house. It's not gonna happen, because it's not gonna happen, because what's gonna happen is, oh, yeah, annex us. The only way it's gonna get annexed is the guy gets R2 or better, because there's no economic argument other than that, period, done, end of sentence.
Well, but
If the
benefit-
well fails, if the one under Peter's scenario, you got a single house and the well fails, they're not gonna say, okay, annex me for one. They're gonna say, you know what? Hey, man, I'm annexable into the town. I can get access to town water and sewer.
And
I'm
we'll
gonna
say
put
no.
100
No,
homes.
he doesn't. He could say, if I don't have water, I gotta move out of my house. That's Peter, that's the end of Peter's
I
argument.
mean, we bought the 88 acres, you know, up here in the top corner behind Kraft and Zeltman. We bought that for nothing but a well. And then we eventually annexed it. It's just a big piece of open space. The guy sold it to us. Who knows what Moorfield, you know?
All right. I think so. From the council perspective, I mean,
You know, I see the argument, but I don't have a big problem with leaving
Okay, Bob?
Moorfield in.
leave it in, Al.
I don't, number one thing, we can't change it anyway, so why you ask us? It's up to these people right
No,
now.
we can change it.
Change it right now.
We're
Well-
gonna decide what we're changing.
I mean, this,
Yeah.
We're building
Okay,
consensus decisions.
Ken, the point is we're building consensus. 'Cause
Yeah,
we don't want to
exactly.
get the plan voted down. So you,
I'm talking big plan as a whole. change something, correct?
No, I disagree. I've rendered the opinion that the town council does have the power to make changes.
They recommend we.
Right, and so we're trying to feel out where we all are.
Yeah.
But you can make changes in it. The council
Yes.
can.
In my opinion, yes.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I wouldn't waste my time discussing it.
We only
And Ken, if y'all felt strongly enough about it, I would poll our members here to see if we could go along with that, or if we wanted to, consider it, a bit longer.
Right, I mean, I know you guys have put a lot of time into this, that's why I wanna know what your.
Well,
It's not-
but-
It's not a deal breaker if it goes away, okay?
Yeah.
It's not important, but I don't see the harm in leaving it where it is.
Right, so Ken, what I'm trying to do for planning is, I want it out. Peter's okay with it in.
I'm okay.
Bob,
Okay.
okay with it in. Do you want it in or out?
I'm agreeing with you that I don't want to see the town expand.
Okay, so then what I'll recommend is Councilman Strong would be the fifth vote. And I would, if everybody's okay with this, I would recommend that Councilman Strong weigh in, and then planning look at Councilman Strong as the
Now, Ken, we're not saying that we're going to an exit, and voting on this doesn't an exit. All that voting on it does is say,
Keeps it on the map.
keeps it on the map in case we want to exit in the future. Whereas if we pull it off the plan and something were to come up, we would have a real problem trying to exit in the future. Whereas if we just leave it on here, we can exit in the future if we have some need to.
So how about this? What's the consensus of planning at the end of this discussion for property D?
Well, we know where
How do you feel?
I mean, I feel okay leaving it in, even though I highly value your opinion,
Sure.
Chris. I have
It's all
great
good.
respect for your thoughts.
It's all good.
But I think with Patty, there's no harm in leaving it on the map.
It's really unusual, but I am pretty neutral on this. I could go either way.
Well, I mean, quite honestly, that's the way I feel. I'm neutral.
No, you have to take a
This is
stand.
very valuable to hear these different perspectives. Do you have a strong
You have to take
opinion?
a stand.
I just feel like you could apply that to other pieces one way or another, so there would be a lot of argument around why you would pull a lot of these properties in for
Right,
annexation.
but Jill, how do you feel
So
about Warfield?
I really, I could go either way, and truly, and I know that's not
Yeah,
what you wanna hear right now, but I just think if you're gonna apply,
If it
But if
wasn't
you
in,
have to
I
make
would be
a
fighting to
decision.
put it in, but I don't know that I wanna bother to change it
Right.
and reprint those maps.
Well, I think they're.
Where's Scott?
Print it anyway.
Let's call him.
Okay,
All
sounds
right,
like
so
we're
we have
gonna,
no consensus on
Okay.
planning then.
sounds like we're gonna check with Scott.
It's up to you.
boy, Scott's got a lot
All
of
right,
pressure.
keep going.
All
We
right.
obviously recommended that it be in the
We had
annexed decision.
development in '84.
Well, but before we move over to the Frederick County side, is there any need to talk about Dorseytown?
Yes.
I mean, we're basically, covering all of them, so
Well, unless
I'll throw that.
requested, they won't be annexed anyway, correct?
They have denied it in the past.
Yeah, they don't want to pay town taxes. Can't say they blame them. Why should they? So, why is? Could we hear the rationale as to why Dorseytown's in there? Especially because we know they don't want to be.
Well, I mean, we did have one person up there already come in and get an X because they had to, they were failing well. Well, actually, no, they're not getting an
No,
X.
they're not.
We gave them water without annexing them because they had a failing well. But they started out trying to get an X and couldn't.
Which is even better to protect ourselves.
Remember,
Which
the
is
Jones property annexation is part of G, which is in the Dorseytown area. And also, if you look, it's a big enclave. I mean, it's surrounded by the town. So,
Well, I
those
think-
were some of
I think that was our perspective. We just thought it's almost like an infill
But I like what Peter just said.
situation, but,
I like what Peter just said. They had trouble coming after water because they weren't part of the town. I don't know about you, but I think we should protect our water supply. They don't.
But they got it anyway.
MD will make us give it
Yeah, they
anyway.
got it anyways, you're right.
Well,
What do
but
we get
they
out
had
of
And
a.
they're not paying town taxes.
Yeah, what do we get out of it? Nothing.
So other than filling in a hole in the map,
So it's a net loss for us.
so you're saying maybe we should see them initiate the request as opposed to
Well,
we do.
I guess once again, I would have the same thing. I would leave it in case they do initiate the request, or in case some people there do have another failing and they need to come to us.
we've already have an annexation request.
In that area?
Yeah, the Jones property.
And which one's the Jones?
It is the larger acreage one, towards the.
Is that the ones down the hill where he wants to, kind of down, where he wants to develop?
Was it Altman has a sign up there?
No.
Yeah, okay.
But we advised them that we couldn't move forward because we didn't have an MGE, but we have had a request.
Was it a petition?
Yeah, a petition for annexation.
Okay.
That was what, 2 years
So I
ago?
think it's just there's probably
For
just an
subdivision.
anticipation that this is an enclave, and these people are probably eventually going to.
If they're gonna get water out of us no matter what, I mean, they
But
might as well
again,
pay for it,
I
pay the
don't,
taxes.
sorry, okay, they're an enclave, they're enclave and it fills a hole in a map. What benefit is it to the town of Mount Airy?
Taxes.
They get taxes off of them.
Because right now, that guy's not gonna pay any taxes, but he's getting our water and sewer.
Well, it's just an odd case.
Yeah, but it could be more.
Could be
I mean,
more.
one well fails, who knows when the next one's
But
gonna
that's what
fail.
Bill said.
But, I mean, and they may not. And when
Just
they
for the
come-
record, I don't,
When they
we're
come,
annexing more and more for housing
when
when
they,
it
well,
gets to that.
we're not
No,
annexing.
no, we're not annexing.
I imagine they've been on the
It
map
doesn't
for,
exist, we're not building it.
I imagine they've been on the map for annexation since the very first master plan. That would be my guess. They've always been there.
The option is there if there's a compelling reason or need, is what we're saying.
So I'm sorry, I'll restate what I said. Where, for each one of these, we're taking the first step towards annexation for more housing. For each one of these, without benefit to the town, I'm just making a statement, that's all.
At some point, we may need access through there too.
Or,
Water lines, sewer lines.
State road, we can
who
just,
knows?
we can
Yeah, I guess
just,
we
state
can,
road, we don't
as
need
long
it.
as we're going along the road, we can, yeah.
So I guess I'll do that again. From a council perspective, I think G should come out.
Although if we ever take over Main Street, I guess we would take over to that point and then pick up again on the other side.
I think G should come out.
I really don't have an opinion on it. I'm sorry.
That's fine, it's
I'm
all
not
right.
gonna fight to save it, and I'm not gonna fight to throw it out.
Yeah, I guess my perspective is it came all the way through the planning thing in there. Which tells me,
That's where-
I have no
that's where
compelling,
most-
I guess
That's
my,
what most, you guys are the ones that presented this to us, and there's a
But I
lot
think,
of
Bob,
things
the-
I'm ready to go along with.
Right, I think the intent, Bob, though, is correct me if I'm wrong, the intent is, we're ultimately gonna vote on it.
That's correct.
If we want things changed, let these guys know. If we
Right.
don't, let it go.
Right.
So I'm arguing for some change.
right,
Right, and I understand that.
yeah. My perspective is unless I see some compelling reason to change what planning spent years working on, I'm not gonna change it. I don't really, I haven't seen a compelling reason for either of those.
All right, Ken?
I don't see any reason to take it out because unless they request it, it's not gonna be annexed in.
Okay, I think it's pretty clear.
Okay,
Leave it in.
all right. Frederick County side?
What was
Can I
the,
ask you,
am I
can I
done?
do something that matter?
Anything?
Leave it in.
We're keeping it in.
Keeping it in for now.
That's very good, I'm sorry.
Actually, before we go to Frederick County, so, well, we could do it one and the same. E and F would be Harn and small craft, but we can talk about them after we talk
Yeah,
about
they're
Zeltman and
connected to the
Craft.
Frederick side, so.
Yeah, they're adjacent.
Well, the easy one
You
is
know where
M.
I'm going on this
I
one.
mean, the whole reason M has been in there, sitting there
Below
forever,
Frederick
is
County
for access
Commissioners.
to that land.
Access to
Yeah,
whatever-
yeah,
Yeah,
we
that's-
did.
That's why it's been there forever. The
yeah.
town wants that for access and someday we hope to get it.
We saw that and we saw,
We had a compelling reason for that one.
Right,
I think they actually came to the meeting and spoke.
They did.
And
They did.
they would like us to just go ahead and buy the property from them and do what we want to do, but.
Is that regular?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They have M property, yeah.
yeah.
Now, that's the easy one on the Frederick
Right.
Is
side.
that thumbs up? Is that-
Can you get on regular?
And both sides
I
of
think it's
it
kind
were
of
already
no-brainer to
developed,
Keep it in there.
Yeah.
and so there was,
Yeah,
I-
I think there's no problem there, Tim.
Yeah, that one's.
I
If
think,
that park's ever gonna get used for the public, you need to have.
yeah.
You need that piece, yeah.
but again, the option
I
is
think
there
we
for
got
the
a
town.
regular.
He was in there.
If Parks and Rec wants to take that step. That was our thinking.
Well, he wants.
The other ones that were raised is, people raised the 84 issue, which I guess.
Let's hit Zeltman with Craft.
All right.
But Bob, you wanna go first or you want me to go first?
Knock yourself out.
Everything prepared to say, Chris?
But let's, but let's hold off on extension of Rising Ridge for just a minute. Let's just talk about, let's just talk about land use and the rest of it,
So,
unless that's a compelling reason for you.
yeah, my apologies, Mr. Chair. I gotta include the extension, Rising Ridge extension. So, to me, Zeltman and Kraft come out. Zeltman, I'm inflexible on Zeltman. It needs to be removed. We had a citizen's petition that said, don't annex Zeltman. So I will not vote for a master plan that has Zeltman in there because the citizens have clearly stated by petition, that's, the ultimate democratic process, don't annex this land. So Kraft is not asking for annexation. The other challenge that we have in here that I think is the bypass road, Bob. I don't know what traffic problem the bypass road solves, except for the following issues. Eliminating Zeltman because the citizens said they don't want it. So you eliminate Zeltman, the traffic for the bypass, a couple problems. Number one, where's the traffic going up north? I don't know. Number two, it puts all of the traffic onto the collector road through the Twin Arch neighborhood. Those folks don't want that. And then number three,
Twin Ridge.
thank you, Twin Ridge. And then number three, 5 of our 11 wells are along this route. 5 of the 11 wells. So to put a collector road in the neighborhood of 5 of the 11 town roads, plus the citizens already said no Zeltman.
Okay, now I will respond.
Okay.
The citizens didn't say no Zeltman, they said no Zeltman plan, which was an above-ground water source. It was a land swap, and it was 150 houses, and there were lots of things involved with Zeltman. It wasn't just a piece of property. Okay, that's number one. Number two, the only way you have to get to your subdivision right now in Summit Ridge is Main Street or 27. Okay, and that's everybody in your subdivision and everybody in the one behind you, and I can never remember the name.
Sterling Glen.
Okay, this was designed a long, long time ago. Rising Ridge Road was designed a long, long time ago to get this traffic off of Main Street.
Thank you.
Okay, and that's why I want it kept in there. Somebody with a lot of sense designed that road so you can access that end of town without going on Main Street and Main Street and 27.
And the actual design of that road
And
is
the
meant
desi-
to
there's-
not have driveways
it runs
backing out
through
onto it.
Twin Ridge.
It has
There's
not,
not
yeah.
one resident that has
Yeah.
access to that road.
Yeah.
I live on that road, and I was denied access to put a gate in that plastic fence so that my kids could go to the bus stop through the backyard and cross Rising Ridge Road. They had to walk all the way around.
I can give you the streets and roads thought process, because we discussed this when it came to leaving that on there. And our thought process was, it is very problematic to go back and add it later if we decide to do it, because all of a sudden, nobody's on notice that we plan to someday build it there. Whereas if we leave it there, everybody in theory is on notice that at some point we may put that road through. So our feeling on streets and roads was, we don't know whether we're gonna do it. It may get done in 2 decades, but at least we need to keep everybody on notice that at some point, we think there may be a need to get Buffalo Road out of the northern part of town, through town, without running it on Main Street.
But all right, so I appreciate both those comments. The practical aspects of it. The amount of money, first of all, to do this, that implies Kraft gets annexed, right?
Yes, I think we're.
Kraft will only get
We
annexed.
could argue, you might be able to do, the county might be able to finish the road too.
Okay, but let's just assume that the county
Right.
has no interest in it, because the county's interest probably lies along 27. So Kraft gets annexed. The only reason why Kraft is going to get annexed is not for parkland and open whatever. Kraft is going to get annexed for how many homes could you build on that property? 100 or more.
Yeah.
Now, that will put the pressure on Zeltman to get annexed for how many? 250 homes.
Not if we take Zeltman out.
But hold on. trying to convince you of both of those things. And the only practical way to generate the money to build such a large collector road is to annex likely both Kraft and Zeltman for 300, 400 homes to
Yeah.
generate the funds to do that.
The county might do that.
Do we want the
The
county?
county could
I can't
develop
imagine.
them.
Well,
We'd rather the county.
could
That's-
develop them and say, build the road.
that's
I mean,
where
it's not-
we started with a fear that we could see incursion from Frederick County on those properties.
I
And
see
then,
that
and Judy brought that up with several of our outer boundary areas. That's where we started. You
Yeah,
know,
we have had our fits with the Frederick County
Yeah.
lack of vision.
They have showed a
in
desire
Newmarket.
to build on vacant space.
And not to say that they couldn't
Especially along
change
our
it,
border.
but we're looking at both of those properties coming in at conservation. And so, and not that you couldn't change it, I get that, you
I'm
can
sorry,
grow up.
what lesson did we learn this evening? Well, we'll bring it in as conversation and they can upzone the heck out of it, and you know they'll do that. They've
So
already
there's
tried
50
that.
properties total that could be built.
Zeltman was
between those two.
250.
Well, I think the county has Zeltman at, what do they have?
They have
They are
a,
too?
comprehensive land use designation of low density,
Yeah.
Distorted.
but their zoning remains
Rationale.
agricultural.
Okay.
The only objection I have against L, which is not Zeltman, and I'm kind of, once again, I don't know why you would take it out, but, is Rising Ridge Road Extension. And that's been a bug of mine since 1992, finish the damn road.
But Bob, it's not, I'm sorry, let's go along that. If the desire is to finish it, okay, then you annex Kraft, you admit that, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Kraft's only gonna come in if you put houses there, right? It's only gonna come in if you put houses there. Yes.
Right.
I'm not saying
You're-
build this
you're-
road. You're
you're
thinking
assuming-
that
you're
we're gonna,
assuming we don't-
January 1st, we're gonna annex this in and build the road. That ain't gonna happen.
You're assuming we don't buy it.
But
I
I
can't.
mean, we bought the 88 acres right next to it. We paid
Right.
cash.
10 years from now, things may change enough that this becomes viable. How do you get it back in there?
But
It's already there, why take it out?
because it shows where, it shows.
Can't you see I'm winning this battle?
Yes. Yes. You are.
Maybe we could end it then.
No, no. Yes. Well, there was a comment sent to me in email that this is one of the most vicious town councils we've had in a long
Yeah,
time.
oh, yeah.
We're really vicious right now, Bob.
Is this it? Have we got to the?
Somebody has
level?
never watched a council meeting before in their life.
I know,
Yes,
that's what I was
I-
thinking, I was like, have they not gone to previous council meetings?
Bob, to me, it's more philosophical. I ran on a platform of, I understand what you've told me when I knocked door to door. You don't want to annex any more land for residential development. We don't want to get back into the
No, we
problems
don't.
we were before.
Half acre lots, or $500,000 homes, we don't need
No, we
anymore.
don't.
We got enough.
Okay, so to me, this is philosophical. It's not going to happen. We don't want it to happen. The citizens don't want it to happen. Pull it out.
But once again, I'm saying, you're assuming the town doesn't buy it to put that road through. We bought the 88 acres right next to it.
I think that the town,
I mean, we bought it. We didn't get the developer to develop it. We just went in, we said, we want it.
Right.
We bought it. If that remains something like, agriculture in the county, it may even have some type of ag preservation on it. It may be a very limited value in that state, and we may just be able to, somebody buy the thing.
I'm sorry, I heard
And
all the same
we gain
arguments.
park property.
I heard
we
all the
gain
same
park
arguments with
property.
Zeltman.
Huh?
I heard all the same arguments with Zeltman. Look,
Well, the Zeltman was coming in for development right then and there. There was a development plan on that. We never talked about us buying Zeltman. But I'm just saying, Kraft, I mean, it's it would be a perfect place for parks.
But
You
it's-
could access it from all the different developments over there.
but it,
It'd be a lot of money.
it's not,
I
it's
wonder
just not gonna happen.
what you planning commission folks think about leaving Kraft in and taking Zeltman out because of the rejection of the Zeltman development a while back.
I would argue that.
my fear is where we originally started for both of the properties. That was concern about Frederick County doing their own thing. Even though we've been told by our planning liaison, Tim, Phil, that there's precedent, I think it was Brunswick, that when they had a change in their plan, they took those changes, they went to Frederick County and they said, here's the way we've identified, you know, outer boundary properties and so forth. Can we see you agree with that and concur? Can we see that in your master plan? And basically said, yes, they have the opportunity to respond. There's no guarantee that they will, or that they will act on it. So that was a concern that we had. Okay? And I would still have that concern, that it's hanging out there. But that may be a step in the right direction.
Well, I guess, getting to Chris's comments, if we had Zeltman and we actually plan to annex Zeltman, I mean, if we have it in our plan but we don't annex it, then the county can still, they can still do
We're not
whatever
interested
they
in
want.
annexing either for residential growth.
I understand that.
Never have been.
What I'm saying is, we want it to stay, we want it for conservation or ag. But if we have it in the plan,
Or
the
park.
county can still develop it,
Yes.
The
right?
county can do whatever they
Right.
want.
And if we do try to actually annex it, they're not gonna, Zeltman's not gonna agree to be annexed at what we want it to be.
Per
So-
your argument, unless there's
Oh, guaranteed.
economic
we
interest
already
in it.
know it
You know,
because of the
I
past.
suspect that in the very near future, the Zeltman property is gonna be on the market. I know Jean, you know, Raymond's passed away, she's trying to work the farm herself. I've not asked her the question, I didn't even think about it until she sent us all a letter. But I gotta believe it's gonna go in the market sometime soon. I don't know what somebody's gonna wanna buy it for, or what they're gonna wanna do with it.
Chances are it's not gonna be a dairy farm.
Yeah, it's not gonna be a dairy farm.
So we leave it in, and
It was originally a vacation house.
right. So we leave it
That house,
in.
there was a vacation house for
We
somebody's rich.
leave it in, then we witness all over again. Well, you know what? So some developer buys it, okay, and then he's going to split the town in half again. He's going to say, okay, guess what? I'm going to put this wonderful development in it. Now, I'm going to put a turf field and two baseball fields, and I'm going to get all the sports people because we got a short, and then the history will just repeat itself. Sorry.
Yeah.
This is wrong.
I'm for taking Zeltman out and leaving Kraft in. That's
Could a
where I
developer
am.
do that, Chris, through the county, through Frederick County, do that same
They
exact
could
thing?
do the same thing.
Not
for the
without
county.
water, not without the sewer plant.
Well, but we don't have water or sewer to give them either.
I mean, Frederick's running a pipe to Newmarket for all that.
If we don't have water and sewer, why is it in there? We don't have
Well,
water and
for
sewer,
Kraft,
which,
For Kraft, I said, you know, it might be cheap enough that we might just buy it at some point.
But that's Kraft.
Because we never,
I
But
don't
there's
know
a
about
part-
Zeltman either. I don't know what the value would be in that
But-
property if it just went on the market as agriculture.
if you wanted to buy it, I would say that if it's not part of the town, the value of the land is significantly less, because it can't be annexed into the town.
Kraft's
If you
128
put it
acres.
as part of the
Zeltman's
annexation
153.
area,
That's
then the
value.
value goes way up, because hey, maybe I can get in with a turf football field and build 300 homes.
I would assume somebody's gonna do that, would do their homework first.
Just because.
Usually those guys are pretty cautious.
That's what's getting my mind, just because it's here doesn't mean it's going to be annexed, it's the whole process.
There's.
Bob's right, I'm losing.
Like I
Well,
said,
wait.
it comes to this table first, and then it'll come to this one.
The reason that I'm swayed about Zeltman is really because what Chris said and what's true is that we didn't want it, you know? I mean, it was going to be annexed and it was rejected, so
That's a different
that,
argument than Kraft, in my opinion.
yeah, me too, exactly. So that's actually why I am swayed to say, get rid of Kraft, get rid of Zeltman and keep Kraft. Because it is
Is
sort of,
that the
it is,
recommendation that the planning
No, that's-
commission is making to
I-
the town council?
not that I know of.
Because unless you recommend that to us, I don't want.
Well, Patty's
I'm
gonna
just
go.
letting
What's
them
Patty
know
decide?
what my
Patty's shaking her
idea
head.
is.
No, I'm saying no, because it looks as though, correct me if I'm
I
wrong,
think it's
Bob, that the
disingenuous.
road is also going to be on a
There's a little
portion.
corner where it's gonna go through Zeltman.
And you could probably change that
Yeah,
angle.
yeah.
So
These
you-
are just,
You
Yeah.
could
You
do
could
something
change that
around it
angle.
a little bit.
You could probably do that whole road on Kraft if that's what you wanted to do.
And streets and roads and engineering expertise, if that was the will of the
Well, we wanted the
town
road kept on.
and the council,
Oh, yeah.
then, I mean, in terms of the wells that are there adjacent to it, obviously, that would be a major consideration, how to coexist with them. Tony, do you have a
Is
preference?
that the
Judy?
recommendation, Chris?
I'm
the
waiting.
chair's got the floor.
We're sitting here willing to entertain if that's what you're, if that's.
Well,
what
and we're
the
saying the
planning
same thing.
commission's
We're
gonna offer.
entertaining your recommendation.
I'm trying to picture what Frederick County will do with Kraft and Zeltman. They've gotta have a plan. I mean, they're tearing up Newmarket, just adding pipes from the Potomac. Could they do the same thing to Kraft and Zeltman? Throw a pipe all the way over there?
Well, we did look at the fact that the town could throw a pipe to Newmarket. We had looked at that as an alternate water
Right,
source, and
yeah,
we looked at the pricing of that, so yes, it could be done.
And what is Frederick County doing?
Well, it was, but if you put together two parcels, you put enough houses on it, $10 million is
Well, they wouldn't
doable.
have craft.
But they wouldn't have water, they wouldn't have sewer, would be their issue.
I'm sorry, I gotta, you gave me something. You gave me something. Sorry. Bob's got me hanging. That's the reason why I don't want it in here. You could make the case between Kraft and Zeltman, I can build 500 homes. That's more than enough money to pull the pipeline.
Okay, well.
That's the whole reason why
okay,
we
so-
shouldn't be annexing this land.
Okay, so hold on then. So if we annexed Kraft and not Zeltman, you split that potential huge parcel in half, you lose the potential for 500 homes. Do you not?
That's
Yeah,
true, the
just-
profitability goes down substantially when you're not,
But
when you
notice,
split them.
yes, Tony,
That's true.
and I'm still hanging up what Peter just gave me. Notice we're still talking about annexing land for homes. I won't
No,
do
no, no,
that.
I'm
really.
saying as a safeguard. If
No.
you-
Not
if
really
we-
talking
If we
about that.
annexed,
But
let's
that's
just
where it
say,
ends up.
let's just
So
say,
if
Chris,
you-
we annexed
right.
in Kraft
Right.
for the road, for Wood Park, whatever.
Right.
If that's in the town and Kraft is not annexable,
Zeltman's not.
that
Zeltman's
potential is gone for
Yeah.
500 homes in a pipe.
We're talking how to prevent it.
That's really.
I'm talking about a
that's
prevention, I'm talking
my-
about a shield against that.
I want them
Think,
both
Chair?
out, but I'm
What do you
listening to
think,
y'all.
Chair?
I mean, getting rid of
Pull up the
Zeltman's
numbers?
better
I
off.
don't think any of us are
I'm
saying
about
we want to
ready to.
annex either of these for homes.
Right.
But we all recognize the reality.
How do we
that the
protect those
count-
against
that
Frederick
the county
County?
might do that,
How do we protect those against Frederick County
and we may have to react, we may have to take some proactive action.
How, but Peter's a good point though, then how, okay, the county may do something, so we're gonna take proactive action. The county's gonna do whatever they want anyway, they've already shown they'll do that. I mean, the fact that it's on our plan for whatever,
Means they'll talk to us before they do it.
but they'll talk to us anyway, cause
They might.
but planning precepts say they
Yeah.
have to. Whether it's in our plan or not, they have to. If they're gonna do something that affects our boundaries, they have to. So how does, again, I'm wondering, how does the fact that we leave it in there help us at all with the county? Does it?
Kraft or Zeltman?
Either.
Well, if we were to decide that, you know, rather than it go into the county, we may decide to take it in here, because we think we can work a better deal for whatever reason.
Right, my point is,
Do you think the county would not be as ambitious if we had Kraft but not Zeltman? If
no, I'm just rejecting the argument that if we leave it in the plan, it gives us some one-up over the
With
county.
what?
I think that's
we
irrelevant.
live what in the plan?
If we, I'm
Let's
rejecting.
say Zeltman's out, but Kraft is in. That's the new map. Does that help us from the county, Frederick County's overzealousness of building every last piece of dirt? Do you think?
The
Seriously,
difference there is we have a need for craft for a road we want.
Right.
You guys have a need for Craft Road you want.
Streets and roads felt we needed, you know, and we had some, and on streets and roads, there are some people with road engineering
Actual
backgrounds
knowledge.
who know what they're
I
doing.
mean, I have a genuine fear from Frederick County, considering what they're doing to the Newmarket area, that they would look at Kraft and Zeltman together as one giant piece
Yeah,
of
that's a
property.
good point. As a
Buy it
whole, you
and
could
say,
make, you
"Oh,
might have
look,
enough houses to
And
do
we're gonna run a
something
giant
there.
pipe over here and we're gonna make this happen. And we're gonna have this giant property.
They
stuck
got,
in-
still got the sewer issue.
Okay, planning members,
Horse dead.
raise your hand if you're in favor of keeping Kraft in. If you're in favor of keeping Kraft in,
Yeah.
okay? Raise your hand if you're in favor of taking Zeltman out.
So, Chris, you wanted to take Zelman out, right?
I want them both out.
So you have,
But, well,
We got,
but
Yeah,
the
but-
question was,
You got
do you
half.
want Zelman out?
Yes,
So you wanted
absolutely.
to have your hand up there. The question was, hand up.
Oh,
No, he's just doing-
I'm
no,
sorry,
he's
I'm
just
voting
doing
with the
special.
council, not with the county.
Okay,
He was
so
just-
planning commission says Kraft in, Zeltman out. That's
All right.
And if
we're at
that's what,
consensus.
if that's what you're recommending to us, then I have no problem.
I don't think I have a problem with that either. Ken?
Right.
I think we've.
They're
thrown-
just on the-
Because fight
Just
with
for
Chris
the
was saying.
record, I
Cut
say
them
keep them both in.
Right,
So-
that is
Okay.
the key.
I
For the record.
I mean, I can see that argument, but I'm stronger by keeping craft in than I am by keeping South
Okay,
in.
okay, just for the record, how many of our planning commission members, by preference, would actually prefer to see them both stay in? 2 of us. Okay. All right. Just for the record.
So, so
I like
consensus,
the- I like the point.
consensus amongst everyone is remove Zeltman, keep Kraft.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, that's where we left it, based
That's
upon
the-
feedback.
Yeah, well, I'm talking
Yeah.
about everybody.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
Consensus compromise.
All right.
Yes, ma'am.
So before we move from this area, let's talk about Horn. How's that pronounced? Is it Horn? H-A-R-N?
Horn.
Horn.
Harn.
Horn and small craft. And our thinking there was, you had a line of demarcation with Buffalo Road. You had adjacency that was already developed. These are very, very small parcels.
Yeah, I don't have a problem.
We
with
we
this.
simply looked at that as
Yeah.
tantamount to infill.
Because when L comes in, they'll just make little enclaves like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. If you ever bring it down, you kind of gotta bring it down.
Why do I feel like I'm on the Titanic? My own personal
Just
Titanic.
keep playing the violin, Chris.
All right,
Wait a minute, so E and F are okay?
Yes.
They're okay.
with that.
Okay. And L.
all right. So that takes us to
O and N.
84 Lumber and South Main Street.
Yeah, April over, and then I guess the day property, is that what that actually is? O? South Main
Yep.
Street, what you're calling it, but.
Yep.
I'd just like to know the reason for 84 lumber. Because ever since I've been around, it's always been the theory that you never go past 70.
I know, I thought we
So
kept it.
everything's the same. And,
Well, it kept flip-flopping back and forth.
Going on the other side of 70 for 84 lumber.
We weren't unanimous on this. I mean,
No.
we had opinions all over. Part of this was a feeling by at least some of our commission members, a concern for Highway 27 corridor and the location of Harrison LaShire, okay? And giving the town the possibility of other locations, other commercial locations, and perhaps other office park locations, okay? If we can get something basically off of 27, there was a feeling that could be a legitimate alternative or option for us to at least consider. The opportunity of commercial and/or office park somewhere other than directly on 27 was the possibility of that. I think that was, correct me if I'm wrong, but I
Yeah.
believe that was
Yep.
the rationale for some, at least leaving it in still at this point. Okay?
I'm with Ken.
Stop it, go do it,
I'm with
go
Ken,
out
yeah.
there.
Stop it, pull it out.
What is the county's plan for 84?
Limited industrial.
Yeah.
Except for there's a 14 or 15 acre resource conservation, which kind of like hugs the southern boundary of it.
And I think the other thing, if I recall, we were talking about how that is like the gateway into Mount Airy from 70.
Yeah, we did talk about that.
And we
Yep.
talked about how if it turned into industrial, that's where they developed that. Is that the welcoming sign that we wanted for people to come into the town? And I think that was
That's true.
just another
That's
piece of
true.
consideration
That's
that
true.
went into it.
Well, I think if you were gonna do industrial anywhere, okay, that is, I'm not for this, by the way, but.
You're gonna argue?
Just in case.
Wait a minute, I caught you now.
This is the small problem that I have with Harrison LaShire, is you're putting 2 miles of 27 and you're gonna load it up every day with people.
Yep.
If N and O were to
Yep.
stay in there, I don't have a problem with that. I was against the South I-70 annexation years ago, and I wrote letters to the editor every day. And I am against that, okay, because I think there's a lot of problems, water, sewer, you start spreading out and you really become a problem. But if you were gonna put industrial and commercial anywhere that we've talked about, that is absolutely the best place. You come right off of 70 and drive into there, and you do not have to go down 27. And That's the only reason that I like it, but I really don't like it.
Well, but the county could do that too.
Absolutely.
The county could do that.
And if the county does it over there, we don't have to worry about water or sewer or anything. And putting any water and sewer under, I-70 would be prohibitively expensive.
I think they investigated it 20 years ago, and it was like $18 million.
And there was no, and as I recall, there's, over at N at least, there's no usable wells over there that we'd be interested in.
If you save the money on the bypass.
And N is being added this time, is it not? That was not in the last master plan, am I
That is
correct?
correct.
Yeah, I have no problem scrapping N particularly.
I don't have problems.
I don't have any problem with that either.
Okay.
I would prefer to have it out.
Okay,
So we're all in consensus.
are
to
we
get
in
rid of it?
agreement?
Scrapping N?
Both of them?
Yeah, I can see
Or
O
just N?
staying in only because we
All right.
kind of surround it, and they can't get out without coming through the town.
Yeah.
And I will say, we get and Ken will find this on Streets and Roads after a while, we get constant complaints from the people along South Main Street, from the access from O to South Main Street. I mean, we've had groups of people show up at meetings, and the town is actually currently providing, is it water or sewer to some of the houses up there? We provide one or the other.
It's-
Water?
Yeah,
I don't know.
it's from my mom's property.
I thought it was sewer. I thought one of them ran sewer line down there into it. But we are providing services to some of the properties up there already.
And O is actually in the 2003 plan. So
Right,
it
right. Well,
wasn't-
because O's been there for a while, and people have come to us and they complain about this road because it's dusty and it creates all these problems, and we're like, well, sorry, but it's not in town. As soon as you turn off the street here, you're in the county, go complain to the county. And it's just always a real problem, so, it's one that's been hanging around for a while. I would prefer to leave that in, just for the sake of leaving it in, because at some point or another, I think it's gonna happen. Like I said, they're getting services up there.
Again, it provides the option without,
Correct. Correct.
without committing the town to do the annexation.
Chris, what are your thoughts on O?
I'd like to see N removed, and I'm fine with Peter's rationale on O.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
What?
I agree.
There's no houses.
I want to change.
This is
No
rare.
houses.
Chris and I have agreed on something.
Okay, planning is
Yeah.
pretty much in agreement,
You're
I
on
gather.
O then,
Using
that's
O
Okay.
and dropping in.
Heather,
Okay.
Heather baby?
I got it. We're keeping O, we're removing N. As I'm joking myself, removing N.
Just because Bob and I agreed on one of these?
You better stop while we were ahead. Okay, so that's our annexation
Hold
area.
on, we got a little, that little
Outer
P thing
boundary.
there.
Heather's got some.
Heather,
Well, the P is, that's a cleanup. That didn't.
I beg your pardon? Oh, okay.
What time is it? Because I want to mark the tape right now.
8:25.
Thank you.
That is.
Did we just accidentally annex around somebody by accident?
I think it might have just been, yes. So we're just.
Or it was a mapping
that's
error
that
or
whole
Yeah.
little
something,
line,
yeah.
so.
There have been a few of those over the years where boundaries get drawn
Yeah.
wrong.
Which one is this? I put
We're
P.
gonna try not,
P.
we're gonna try
Oh,
not to make
my.
any of those changes.
It's a little enclave right
Isn't that
there.
called spot zoning?
I remember about 10 years ago, we got a deed for like one of the wells. And then when we actually checked it out later, we realized.
It wasn't in town?
For like 60 feet down the street, and we didn't actually have the deed for the well. Because it was just a screw up in the way things were drawn, and we didn't pick it up for a while. And it got sorted out, we went back to the basic.
So
What's
H,
the-
I, and J to remove, to, the Dowd, Springwood, and Spicer.
I think
was
we
the
left H, I, and J.
Left it alone.
And I don't think
Okay.
anybody had a problem with P.
Okay, well, that's good. That's what we want. And then Nil, was okay to stay in, and Warfield
Nil was
is
okay
So we're gonna
to stay
write a
in,
letter,
but
we're
you're
gonna
right, a letter.
explain
Explain to Mr. Neal the reason.
Basically, any future annexation area at this time will be
Right.
namely deemed conservation until such time as it is.
But that doesn't restrict highest hands to conservation.
Okay. And then D, Warfield is pending
Scott.
Councilman Strong and.
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, I think that's all the annexations.
All right.
It is.
Are we done?
It
We
is.
had, I had Cowboy, that's the property behind Burger King. Burkett, O'Brien, and Carnival Grounds as the ones that were really raised to us. Were there any others?
Cowboy.
That's, yeah, behind Burger King. We had
Dr.
several people talk about that. Dr. Williamson spoke.
Dr. Williams-
And the guy, and the people down on the people from L'Oreal Court down there spoke, and
Yeah.
the homeowners in there came and spoke. My feeling was if somebody brought something to our attention, we ought to at least take a double look at it. If nobody came to any of our meetings, you know, and complained about something, then I'm just gonna kind of leave it. That's not a real problem.
Well, and this is an opportunity for the rest of the council to bring up whatever.
But
So,
I named it Cowboy because it's where the Cowboy building is.
Right.
So
All right,
that's how I remembered it.
Whatever.
You could call it Burger King if you wanted, or the chiropractic
Okay,
building.
let's
There's
see.
a couple parcels of it. We were moving those to commercial, I think, weren't we, CC?
no.
Okay, what
No,
were we
no,
moving
no.
those to?
It's different.
LC on Ridge Court,
LC, okay.
and then proposed NP for Mr.
Oh,
Haddad's
actually.
property.
Okay,
it was
this,
NP and
this is
LC.
page 70.
Thank you, Mr. Bill.
This is
Sorry.
page
In
70.
those,
And there's
in those minutes, it said neighborhood professional, so I was getting happy.
Yeah, and those were draft minutes.
I was like,
We've
oh, they
got-
listened to me after all.
I saw that, I agree on my.
Right, yeah, there's-
Okay, there are 3 contiguous properties, Holmes,
I can't
Haddad,
fool you, Heather.
and Chiropractic First, that we felt could be limited
Should
commercial
be NP.
as opposed to,
Well, they were REs,
yep,
yeah.
as opposed to Mackenzie Cantress property and the other Haddad property on Ridgeville,
Yeah,
which
Matt
we felt
Kansas
should
is
be.
already using that, that's his office.
That's
He's-
right.
He's
Oh,
running
yeah.
a law firm in there
Oh, yeah.
now.
And
Has for a
under
while.
the non-resident, non-resident professional special exception,
Right. NP would just put him within his zone.
as with, yes.
That's what I guess chiropractic first too, that would put
That
them
would
in
be
their
nice.
zone as well.
And we
Right,
felt
well,
like,
if they were NP,
Yeah.
we would put them in their zoning. Limited would be a
That
big change.
parcels 494, 496, and 497 requested limited commercial.
yeah. And then the larger Haddad property across the street from Cantress would be the buffer between the limited commercial and the residential area.
Heather, I'll put you on the spot. What's the
The,
code section off the top of your head on LC? That's
Across-
81,
No, behind it,
I
right?
put it in my
Well,
comments.
it's
Behind it.
adjacent,
112, 112.
It's
I'm looking at the map.
it's adjacent to the
Yeah, I
other
see the
3.
picture.
493?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Picture.
Haddad, yeah.
But what you have to realize is that because Haddad is vacant, there's really not necessarily much of a buffer. I mean, it's just.
Yeah,
a
it's
piece of
open land.
property, open
Right.
Property. So if you have limited commercial, you can have a lot of different things there, and then you have residential right next to Haddad. And all these folks came in initially requesting neighborhood professional in the very beginning of this
Yeah,
process.
so I guess the question would be, why would these not all be NP?
I don't know.
Yeah, especially because you heard a concern, at least from one resident, about the traffic.
Right.
Thought, well,
In-
if you
in-
did
in
it,
a-
you'd
Right,
have
Right.
to-
and the resident said he has no problem with what's there
Right.
now, that would be fine.
Exactly.
As long as it's just more of that.
And in our
that's
other
fine.
meetings at the Carnival Grounds, there were a lot more residents concerned about this
Right.
early on.
Yeah.
And the thing is that this was very early in the process when we just kind of went through them, went, oh yeah, that's fine, but without fully realizing,
Yeah.
then the neighbor, the people started showing up, and so I
Yeah, 'cause
really,
LC, you're
think it
talking
should
about
be.
paint, wallpaper,
Oh, yeah,
stores,
all kinds of
hardware. You're
stuff.
talking drugstores.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, that's,
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
way
NP
too
is-
intense.
NP is our buffer. And
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you look at the corner property, there's Matt Cantress's. And when he looks across the street, he's looking at the back of Five Guys. Okay? But that's NP, that's what NP is for.
Right,
Now,
the
the next
buffer.
house down would be
Right.
residential, but
Right.
the NP is that in between.
Right.
so the
You know?
suggestion here is all 5 go MP
Yeah.
in this
Now,
group.
I'm
That would be
thinking,
my-
I'm
I
thinking
think so.
chiropractic first. NP would probably be what he's doing now.
Right.
Am I correct?
yeah, yep,
So LC would be an expansion.
yep.
The only thing would be for NP, I believe, I'm not sure about the NP,
Think it's too
sorry,
big
is
or
limited
something?
to the 2,000 square feet.
It's
um,
too big.
Yeah, I can't say that for certain, but I.
Well, you have the
think
code right there,
you
right?
may-
Always.
I know
I have
NP,
part of the NP here,
the maximum,
Well, it also limits the number of doctors you can have there too.
not neighborhood professional, no. That is if it's in a special exception.
And I thought that we looked at the first, there was the commercial, like where the Five Guys is and everything, and anything up next to the,
Well, he's
so
got
like
rid of that.
0497, 09693, could be commercial, because you had 0493 and 099 being that
That's a
buffer.
buffer.
Right.
So you could keep the other ones limited commercial, but you had that buffer of the NP between them.
And especially because that homeowner was requesting
Correct.
NP.
Yep.
In Mackenzie's situation,
Yes.
he does confront commercial, but the Stepics are, which is the residential property owner directly east, there is no ability to buffer.
I mean, if you could,
So-
if the front ones are all LC, you could tear them all down and put a drugstore. I mean, we
Right.
don't want to do that.
Right, and-
There's a
and that is-
5,000 square foot limit,
Yeah, but you can have
but
You
you are
have to put all
correct.
those lots together, I guess.
Right, but if you did put them all together, now you could throw a drugstore or something like that, which is what we're trying to avoid, right?
Now, these are the recommendations here, right? The recommended zoning, and that's what you guys are recommending to us?
well,
But it's just like
We
you're
did
changing
all-
the
it wasn't-
recommendation.
Do you have a desire to change your recommendation? Because I'm good with it, just like you've done here.
I have a desire to change it.
Well, why don't you guys go around your table and decide where you go?
Who do I vote with, them or you?
But I want to just point out, as I did earlier, but maybe everyone didn't hear me, is that the Haddad property, that's the buffer, is a vacant lot. There's no buffer, there's no trees, there's not even a building. So if you're,
You're talking 493, right?
Yeah, the
Right.
long one,
496.
yeah, the long one.
the long one, it's
Yeah,
vacant,
big long
there's
one.
nothing on it. So if you're a resident that's to the, I guess that's the east of that, and somebody builds a drugstore, just because there's a vacant lot between you and the drugstore, does not
That's
really
not
much.
really a buffer.
It's
You're
not really a
still looking
buffer.
at You're still looking at the back of a drugstore.
Yeah, yeah.
There,
That's a house, isn't it?
there's buffer requirements required with the development of any LC parcel too. It's just not that the property itself is a buffer, there's landscaping buffering requirements. Even with the parcel 493,
Did you
there
find
would
if
be
there's a
buffering
limitation
requirements,
NP, what the size?
for any residential use.
There is 2,000 square feet, but
No, when I looked at this property,
I'm thinking
the
NP
person
needs to be
I bought
updated
didn't buy it,
anyway.
worked it on
Yeah,
it.
because that is,
So I'm just saying.
What if the same person
I
bought
think
all
that
of
we were
this
trying to
property?
really
I think that's.
Could-
yeah, that's the concern. Yeah, they could, that's the concern.
Commercial to
Heather?
neighborhood professional, so
Then-
that it was.
And it's
you know,
right at the.
Heather,
it's right
for,
at
for
the
Dr. Williamson's
neighborhood.
chiropractic first, is it, if it's NP, is that properly zoned for his business?
His is,
His,
his
his use, yes,
NP would be a properly zoned for what he's doing.
that is correct.
So there's no reason to change it to LC versus putting it all NP.
Right.
If we were to change it to NP, there's no harm to him as his business
I
operator.
cannot equate that. There is, he would,
He first
he would be
requested
able to
NP.
continue operating.
I remember that
I
very
can't say
well.
whether-
They
If we were to
all-
sell it to another chiropractor, is there any problem with chiropractic first? Should it be an NP? Is that a proper zoning for that business at
That
that
is.
location, and that building, and that size and everything?
That
It
is.
is.
And this would be an upzone for him.
It would
He's a
be
special-
because
He's
it's
already now.
residential existing.
He's a
Yeah.
special
It
exception.
would
Right.
not be a special exception anymore. It would be a use permitted by right.
So then I agree with Leslie, but you should change 96, 90, 94, 96, 97 to NP.
Well, you said move them all to NP.
All NP. Yeah, the other two are already,
Yeah, Tony's saying the same thing.
yeah, same thing, all
Yeah,
NP.
move them all to NP.
Is there anything to
Because his business
prevent,
right now would be most fit if it was zoned improperly. You couldn't zone it to something it's already there, it's already existing.
They become a non-conforming use if we change the zoning to something he wasn't doing there.
Right.
Which would limit his ability to change things.
That's all I'm concerned about, is his,
It
because he's the one
makes-
that's,
He could
he's got skin in the
continue
game right now.
his current practice. It would just be a use permitted by right.
What's allowed in NP that's not
As a-
allowed in
as a
commercial?
professional.
Oh, drugstores, hardware,
you know,
And that could not go into an
Family
NP, so
apparel,
what kind of things
correct.
can go into?
and the other concern that
Basic
I
doctor's
think
offices
we're
and
voicing
not,
is that because there's only one point of ingress and egress to that neighborhood,
Correct.
then the possibility of limited commercial carries with it more possible
Could get
impact.
a lot of traffic back there.
Yeah,
And that would be a concern for the whole neighborhood.
Right, and that was the neighborhood concern I heard. They said you put another couple more Dr. Williamsons in there, fine.
Right.
They were like, that's what it's, they said, that would be great, that would be fine.
You could
But
put
they
a,
said
you put a
put store
laundry
back
mat
with
there.
People driving in and out all the time, then it's a problem. I hear everybody, I mean, I hear
Yeah,
everybody sounding, maybe this should all, whole strip should be NP. Does that sound right?
Are we consensus
Plenty.
with that?
I
I
have
am.
a question. Does
Yeah.
that include, Mr. Haddad's at parcel 493?
Yes. Yeah, all five is what
But
we're
we're already
saying.
recommending
He's
that.
already-
Well, it already
You already
is.
recommended
There's,
that.
there's only,
NP.
there's only 3 recommended to limited commercial.
Okay, I just want to make sure that there's still the desire to,
Oh, you wanted to leave him residential?
I don't want to do anything. I'm just confirming.
I guess I don't really have a problem with leaving the vacant lot as NP,
Okay.
because, you know, I mean, the question is, do we want to move that back to RE? Because at this point, it now
It's,
is
I don't think
behind
that's really
NP.
hope-
It's not a
yeah.
buffer for LC anymore, it's behind NP.
it's so close to 27.
I would,
Yeah.
It is, I mean, when you're at the back of it, you gotta be hearing the noise from 27.
Right, 'cause
And
I
it's
think-
loud.
Right, because I think this argument extends to, and I'm sure we'll talk about it in a little bit, the same idea extends to, say, the rezoning request on Park. There may be a rezoning request, I think, on Watersville. Watersville, those
Yes.
to me, again,
That's where I
are
see
N,
the core
those
license,
to me are
right there with
NP.
Dr. O'Brien's
I mean, yeah, Doc O'Brien's property is NP, perhaps a Burkett comes in as NP, because
Yes.
they're transitional zones.
right.
Yeah.
Maybe
So-
Hoffman.
Which
So-
is what I felt like. these
Yeah,
were.
I'm looking at this going, that's why I was going NP, this looks like a
Okay.
transitional zone. I think we're all saying this whole thing NP, all these problems.
Planning Commission, are you comfortable with that as well?
Yeah, 490,
Yeah, I'm okay with
494, 496, 497.
Yeah.
All of them NP?
Change to NP.
Yeah, all
Yes.
NP.
Okay.
Got that, Heather?
I do, thank you, Tony. You're always making sure.
I got your
I'm-
back, baby.
I know,
Okay.
Do
I
we want to
appreciate
let,
it.
because I know a lot of these folks were at the public hearing though.
There will be another public hearing on this and they'll be given notice.
I'll be
Okay.
doing a letter writing campaign again.
Okay.
Anything we're changing,
Get ready.
there will be another council public hearing where they can come in and
Okay,
complain about
because I
things
just
that we're
know-
changing from the last time.
Just to clarify, the maps won't be
Ready.
prepared.
What?
I know. I
Hold on,
apologize.
wait a minute,
So
time
we'll
out.
do the best
What are
we
you
can.
slacking? Have you got, wait.
I know, it doesn't happen that quick. I'm in Hollywood, okay?
When will the town council actually vote?
November the 3rd.
November, yeah.
I think the answer was if the council wasn't so cheap and hire somebody to help them.
Okay,
What?
do you want to talk about those other possible
Well, next
transition
one I had on my list was
process?
Burkett.
Okay,
Burkett.
I mean, and there are 2 or 3 of those. I mean, there's
I
Burkett, there's Hopman,
Mr.
there's,
Burkett showed up.
yes.
And he kind of came up and he said, basically kind of, why am I not NP? And I looked at it and I said, gee, that looks like NP to me.
Yeah, the question about Burkett, the question about Park Avenue, NP fits those. This is maybe a discussion for after the master plan, but there may be some restrictions on NP
Well, there's
We
another
need
one.
to change,
that we
right.
could change
Yeah.
to make it
Right.
easier to do NP for Burkett, make it easier to do.
And across the
NP.
road from Burkett is Hopman's property.
Right, and they made a request there. Did they
Yes.
want NP there as
No,
well?
they actually wanted CC.
They
and
wanted
I
that
thought that was too much.
Yeah.
It was.
As to the planning.
That
commission.
could go.
I mean, you're right there against the school and the park.
Yes.
Yeah, we denied.
But I looked at Burkett's part, I was like, it's NP, that's what it is.
So my-
I try and zone what something is.
My only question, because the first time I saw that was in the minutes from the last hearing, is that because he didn't request it, no one knew?
Oh,
Like,
okay.
I mean, I don't know if people, if he did,
No,
it was never in there,
no.
right? Right,
And they asked that night.
right. And I don't know, I mean, there's going to be another hearing, so maybe that's fine.
Well, yeah, he talked to Peter and I, and that's, right, said, you know, well, I'd like to go community commercial, and Peter and I both said, Doc, we don't think that's.
Right.
So
this is a
we're talking,
transition.
yeah, right, we're talking Burkett.
I'm
Yeah,
just
Burkett,
talking,
this
yeah,
is a
I'm just talking
transition
about, I'm just
zone.
talking about that he didn't apply early on,
Right,
that's
that's
all
why he
I'm
didn't,
saying.
right, I guess you guys didn't look at it because he had said
Right,
anything.
exactly.
I agree.
If he had
Like,
looked
like,
at
I'm
it,
kind
I'm
of
sure
applying
that-
here. If nobody said anything, I'm not gonna look at it.
Yeah, so I don't know if that's an issue or not.
Well, if he would make the request, I think the issue is there, if he would make the request, it sounds like,
Well, he showed up, I mean, my perspective is he showed up at the meeting and he spoke and he, you know, seemed to think that, you know, and he also, I think he first butted up against the issue with the political signs.
Yeah.
Right.
Because we were talking about somehow allowing larger political signs on the commercial property but not on the residential, and he kinda got stuck because he's out there at 27, but he's zoned residential.
Right, but then we found a temporary solution, remember?
Yes, we found a very temporary
Very
solution.
temporary. It's gonna be a bigger, longer, more in-depth discussion.
So what's the best way to
I have a
handle this?
question
Do we
for-
go-
Heather, when it says requested zoning for 302 Waterville, his property, who requested the zoning? Did he? It's in this book.
And that's the hot.
That's hot.
That's Hoffman.
302?
I think we're jumping
So,
around.
so
Oh,
Heather,
I hit,
sorry. Oh, well,
I'm reading the,
I'm on
I'm reading the
Burkett
notes
still.
from the hearing.
You moved on from Burkett, I'm
Dr.
still on
Burke,
Burkett.
President Gray zoning neighborhood for his business located at 302 Watersville.
These
that
are
incorrect?
draft.
Oh, oh,
They
oh,
have
that's
an
to
error.
check
Oh, okay,
accuracy
okay.
Or
So my question is whether before the next public hearing, the residents around Dr. Burkett's office would have notice, so they would know that he's requesting that.
A whole new group of signs will be ordered up, I think, for any
Okay.
changes, is that correct? They'll be posted, and would that be the,
I don't see it as an issue, I'm just,
For
you
the
know,
rezoning, the actual rezoning, when you guys do your public hearing for the actual rezoning, letters, direct mailings,
have to, they go out, right?
And we're looking at that in January, if I'm correct, at the January.
we also have to realize what's behind him is an apartment building.
I know.
So,
well,
I-
and then high and
Yeah,
the high.
I've
it's
just-
all higher density
It's on
stuff.
notice, I'm just asking if they need to get notice.
Yes, that would be done. I guess just maybe to move on quickly from this one, it sounds to me like nobody really has an issue with him being NP, that little corner there.
And
I don't
our-
think we do,
I would
I don't know
agree.
if anybody else
is
does.
the same with, and I don't want it, I'm just asking,
Yeah.
is the same rationale for 302 for the Hotman property?
That's the other side of the street.
Right,
maybe.
I
the
mean,
other
it
side.
seems
What,
that
that it
we-
would be NP?
Right,
But they don't want it.
No, they wanted CC, right?
but that's,
And the sidebar discussion we were having was, we were starting to work and conceptualize MXD. Okay, and that was thrown out as another
And they were
possibility as
interested
well.
in MXD.
And they
They
had
were-
some interest in
now
that.
the other thing is, we are working on MXD and we are going to be doing an amendment to this plan very shortly after we adopt it most likely, which I'm excited about. And so we will have another opportunity to evaluate those
Okay.
properties,
For MXD.
perhaps.
Would it only be for MXD?
No, I mean, we would, if we're
Okay.
amending the plan.
Then
we
I think
can
that gives
take a
us the
look.
option to consider that and to even broach that subject with them.
With the Hopman
With him,
community.
who you talking about? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, with that one. Yeah, but I guess I'm
Yeah.
just sitting here saying for Dr. Burkett, he's
Burkett.
operating as an NP there right now.
Right.
Right.
Okay,
Is
that's.
I would say just make him an NP.
Is the formal
In
request,
fact, there's another doctor moving in.
Well, that was my
Yes,
question.
yeah, he does.
Well, he, I don't think, well, he made the verbal request, I
He
guess,
made it verbally.
at the
is
hearing.
That's a very good question.
Well,
that
that's-
Say
legal?
that again?
Is it, the question on Burkett's property
Is he made the request?
he just
properly?
asked Peter and I.
All right, that was-
No, I think it's in the minutes that he.
That was
stood
the
up.
question.
He spoke at the
He
hearing.
stood
Is
up.
that a legal request, or does that have to be in writing?
Well, with the
He doesn't have to make a
comprehensive-
request, period. We can change it
Yeah,
without a request. We don't need the request to include it.
no, there's
Well,
some
I just don't want to go
reasons.
willy-nilly and change it.
Right, right,
Everything.
right.
My mistake was he showed up at the meeting, so we need, if somebody showed up at the meeting and raised something, then I wanted to look at it. And I looked at that one and was like, yeah.
Tom, so, I'm looking at Tom, I mean,
That's the master plan. I mean, you don't need a written request
okay.
to rezone in order to.
Does anybody here, I guess maybe just, anybody have a problem with NP on that corner?
No.
No.
Sounds to me like
Yeah,
everybody's
I
saying.
mean,
okay.
I don't
I think
think we
that's
have a
proper
problem, it's just, we want the people who are gonna be
Yes,
affected
and
to
that's-
get.
All
that's-
these write
Exactly.
letters
Yeah.
and.
Yeah, I mean,
that's
we
another
don't have a
process,
problem. I don't have a problem.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
If
I
we
mean,
put Haltman
yeah, I-
at NP and he wants to go to mixed use, is that going, could he switch,
That
could
would
we
be
switch, could we go
Going
back,
up.
would that be
We're
going
still
up?
working on MXD.
Well, it'd
details, how
probably be
it
when
would
we
work.
amended it, the
When
plan.
MXD comes in, he could be made MXD, correct? Yes, he could, because we would amend the master plan, we
He
could
could
make
be
him an
considered
MXD.
for it, let's not give any assurance and.
I just said he could be made.
He
That
could,
doesn't
he
mean-
could, because
I'm not
I'm
saying he will
just
be made, he
clarifying,
could be.
okay, I'm just clarifying.
wow, my head
So would
hurts.
we have to
can-
change anything on
yes.
his property at this point?
For the plan, how it
For
is
the
now.
plan?
We
I mean-
hadn't,
I mean,
we
now-
hadn't considered it.
We said no to community commercial, his original
Right,
request, that's
so-
all.
Dr. Burkett?
No, this is.
No, no.
Oh, how?
And so
Okay.
right across the street, do we change that, do we need to change anything, or could, once we get MDX in place, could he just come in and ask for that?
Yeah, because I
Based on
think in the plan it
residential.
has them as being considered
Can I ask
for
a-
MXD.
Can I ask a different question first before we leap to MXD?
We're on Hopman now, right?
Yes.
Yes.
The request was community commercial.
Right,
But I think consensus already says no.
right, we rejected it, right.
Right.
Are we, so, and we all believe, I think consensus is MP works right now, that's the tool we have. Do we just do that? In other words,
Without
I
talking
mean,
to them?
No.
yeah, without talking to them.
I don't think
want
we
it.
do.
No,
No.
no,
Okay,
no.
thank you. That-
If
We
they don't
don't.
want MP, then I say we leave them how they are, and then when we come up with
Well-
MX, you take another look at that.
They had
They're
design,
gonna have the opportunity at the zoning public hearing to come forward.
That's my only question, because we're talking about
Yes.
different zonings, and I'm thinking, oh,
Because at the meetings, we try to figure out a
You're
solution for
correct.
them for that property. And for them, it was community commercial or nothing else would work, so that's why we left it.
Or
so is the, sort of the consensus here is, the consensus, it sounds like, is the staff should tell Hoffman, look, you asked for CC, consensus from planning council was no, your
Yeah, so
transitional
they-
zone.
Right, so they know that.
The discussion from planning council was NP would be a good compromise for you, knowing that you could apply for MXD when it came. I think, that's what we're saying,
Yes.
but they have to,
Yes.
okay, thank you, I just.
or
Heather-
either way.
My question though was, do we
As
have
far
to
as
have it
MXD,
at
does it
NP,
have
or
to
could they ask
originate
for
as
MXD?
a
Say we did
NP
nothing,
or commercial,
and
could
we
it
come up with
be
MXD
from a
2 year, a year from
residential?
now?
We
Can
haven't
they
gotten
come in and
there.
ask to update
Yes.
to MXD at that point?
Yes,
If it stays in residential, they could.
So we could do it either way.
MXD from
yeah,
that.
when we develop MXD, we will amend the master plan and we will throw some properties into that. You guys will make a recommendation and we'll throw properties into that. And they can come in and say, hey, we want
Well-
to the properties get thrown into MXD. And
Right,
it sounds
but
to me that's what they're really interested in.
Right, but I'm
Okay.
saying from here, right now, it's residential existing, right? Or is it,
Right,
I'm
it
sorry,
does
R3?
not need to be a previously existing commercial property.
We're still working
Got it.
through the details of how we're gonna get
Right,
MXD to
right.
Yeah,
function.
we'll
Right.
cross
It may
that
not
bridge when
need
you
to
guys
be-
are done.
It may not need to be an NP property.
Right, once
Right.
we have the zoning and it's adopted, then we'll go back and we're gonna amend this. We're gonna review our, comprehensive land use designations, and we're gonna see what properties, depending on how the ordinance works out, what properties might be candidates.
Right,
for
because
that.
we were leery of taking them to community commercial with an intent to go in MXD, because if in the meantime that didn't happen, they had the ability to do whatever.
Something else.
So
Right.
that
Right.
we did not want to happen.
Right.
I've got details.
We have
Yes.
two 302s right now, one is across the road, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Both of them 302, they're the same address.
I don't even know about that. You're right, you are completely right.
Wait,
I just.
I wondered
yes,
about that,
no.
Ken.
Wrong address, right?
That, you are right.
One of them's wrong.
And that's one of them's
No,
gonna
they are,
disappear.
but one was supposed to be a delete, and it didn't get deleted. So I'm deleting it right now.
So there,
There's only
Ignore the bottom one, the R2 low
okay,
density.
so the other one's done.
Perfect.
My
All right.
editor,
So we've done Cowboy Building, we've done Briquette,
Um,
we've done 302,
What
I
else
would
we
say
got?
O'Brien,
Carnival?
O'Brien, and then the Carnival grounds.
okay.
I mean, unless there were some others that I missed, right, because when I tried to come up with my little
Okay.
list.
I got one, the Baker property down here,
The what property?
the Baker,
Oh, we already did that one.
Baker Street.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
different
Baker
Baker.
Street.
Yeah, I'm,
Different
Ken, I'm with
Baker.
you on that.
'Cause I got a number of letters here that, they don't want that rezoned.
Yeah, I got a note like that too, Ken.
All right,
Ken,
let's
I'm with
see.
you.
Let's go to that
Oh,
first.
yeah, right here, right
Yeah.
back in the
Yeah.
back here.
Yeah, I'm with
Yeah,
Ken.
nobody showed up on that, but we did get letters on it.
Yeah, they said, don't leave us alone.
Somebody was here at.
They showed up way in the beginning, and we
Yeah,
changed
they don't wanna be-
everything.
They don't want to be DTZ.
Yeah, they said, leave me alone.
We
The-
changed
the
them all
letters
except
that
for the
you
one.
were referring to, was it specific to 1 Baker Avenue? Or are
Is this
they the ones
207
that were
Cross
your,
Street?
okay.
Is this page
Those
71?
comments, in the 60-day review, everybody back there
Baker
along
property.
Baker was proposed
Yeah, I think
to be
it's-
rezoned to downtown
this
zone.
cross
They
streets.
did not want that to happen.
Our streets is different.
The Foreman property is currently zoned community commercial. That's not a thoroughbred back there. So I guess the compromise, if you will, was to basically restore the residential zoning for all the properties back there. Some of the properties had community commercials, some of them were already RE, residential existing. So if they were residentially existing, we left them alone. If they were commercial zoning, you can see with the 7 Baker Avenue, we were recommending that be placed in an RE existing zoning classification. Now with the Foreman property, so as not to take away any commercial opportunity, that is being rezoned or recommended for rezoning downtown zone.
That's what people done looked at, right? According to the letters I got.
Was that specifically for 1 Baker Avenue?
Well, DTZ would, if anything, be less intense than CC.
Right.
So unless the people back there with the residences are thinking that we're gonna somehow take away all commercial use, DTZ is their best option, which we really can't do. I mean, the business.
Well, and that's the position.
Some of them
we're
did
in.
not want, they wanted to stay residential.
And I understand that, I
Right.
think we've done that. All the
Right.
residences were left
Right.
residential.
And then 1 Baker Avenue was the only one that
Right,
was.
because that's a commercial
Right.
use right now, and we want to drop them to a little bit
Right.
less intense commercial use, which I
Right.
suspect every homeowner back there is happy about.
I did not
Which is-
get any
which is
follow-up
why we're not here,
comments
so
based on the recommended plan, and
Yeah.
everyone got the notice that, the Foreman property, those are the
Right,
comments
everybody
based
else
on
doesn't
this.
want that property changed, is the way I take it.
Well, and those were the comments based, on the 60-day review, when we, when we amended it. We did not get any additional comments. I don't know if the council has, I don't think they have, on leaving 1 Baker Avenue, with a recommended zoning of downtown.
I mean, I think everybody was, I think this is really what everybody
One of
wanted.
those is
Yeah,
commercial.
they wanted to remain
They wanted their houses to
residential.
remain residential, and the Foreman property obviously is not gonna become residential, because it's not a residential parcel.
Right,
We're
so
just-
they
this is
wanted
one
that to be
206.
down.
We're just gonna move it from CC,
The other
which
is
will allow a lot of
1205.
stuff to
Right.
DTZ,
Well, it
which
was
is appropriate.
So Foreman
concerned
1205, this is
that was
commercial.
community commercial back there.
Right.
And on his property.
And this is DT.
Right, so I think I think the Foreman properties is
They're
one of
both
the ones
commercial.
to kind of pass
Yeah,
over.
okay.
Bill, you wanna do O'Brien or Carnival?
Which one, we were looking at, Bill was just helping me with this, so what do we decide here?
On Foreman?
Yeah.
I think everybody was happy with that, because we,
With
the
the
house,
rec-
the housing
DTZ,
units that
those-
originally
Yeah,
complained, because they were gonna be in the DTZ, well, they were pulled
Right,
out of
they
the
wanted
plan.
Right.
So
Oh, yeah, I
they
got
were
that, we were
residential.
just checking the map. Ken,
And
you're
the
good?
Foreman property, which was originally CC, is if anything
going to
being
downtown.
downzoned to DTZ,
Right.
which is more appropriate, and the homeowners should all be really happy about the
Because it's
fact
not
that,
commercial.
that it's not gonna be a McDonald's now.
Right, and Ken, that reflects what the,
Which it
A historical
It could have
McDonald's.
been, I mean, it could have been.
Have any of y'all had any feedback to that effect already?
No, nobody's really said anything.
You
so-
got it. You
they
got
said
it.
a Chick-fil-A. They said a Chick-fil-A, not a McDonald's.
That's
You
right.
made
It was
changes
closed on
very
Sunday.
early on, and I think they were all
Okay.
happy with it, so we were just leaving it.
All right,
They
okay,
were
what,
very vocal to council.
Yes, very.
okay,
Yeah.
ready to move on? Let's do O'Brien first.
All right?
For Carnival Grounds. Our general thinking, I'll throw this out and then any of the commission members can jump in. We had several considerations. We felt that the character and personality of the neighborhood surrounding O'Brien is primarily residential, okay, and was a greater consideration to us. We felt the special exception for neighborhood professional could legitimately be considered for permanency. Beyond that, we thought it was too much impact. We also felt like there was a line of demarcation down the center of 27, and for the most part around that key intersection. Everything west of it is primarily residential. To the east of it is primarily commercial. And for those reasons, we lean toward not granting a rezoning to community commercial. Anybody want to add anything to that?
I would just add that, and Heather has spoken about this, that the master plan has consistently said Center Street would be the corridor, the commercial corridor
Good
from
point.
Route 27 to Main Street to downtown.
Yep.
Park Avenue was never on the master plan to be a commercial corridor. It's all residential coming down into downtown.
Right.
You know, people have spoken at many, many public hearings, the residents, that they do not want this zone commercial. And the property backs up to the Wildwood folks who, so there'd be no buffer. You know, which is what, as we've been discussing neighborhood professional, the neighborhood professional says right in the statute that this is, the purpose of it is to be a demarcation. So to put commercial when you're backed up to residential, and then you have residential next to you, next to you, next to you, just does not seem to be consistent with the purpose or even having a neighborhood professional ordinance.
Right, and then, I mean, I'll say something as well, for the record. There's emails been sent around, especially some emails to the press. Those emails have accused me of anything from perjury to financially gaining, ethics violations and financially gaining from, if I read the email correctly, financially gaining from some sort of transaction. The council has those emails. They're completely false, without merit, without an allegation. But for the record, I will say that myself and the mayor did meet with the petitioner for Park Avenue. The purpose of the discussion was to see if the petitioner would accept neighbor professional as a transition zone. And the petitioners, for their reasons, decided not to. So. And my personal opinion would be neighbor professional for the reasons you point out. More of a transition zone would be more appropriate to that zoning. The challenge at neighborhood professional there is the use of the property right now doesn't necessarily conform to our current neighborhood professional. We've already talked in terms of perhaps adjusting NP somewhat to help some of these businesses out. So, you know, for the council's consideration, if the petitioner there, also, you know, Burkett, if we discuss that, or Hoffman, you know, there may be some need or leeway for the council to perhaps adjust the NP ordinance to help those businesses out. But the meeting I had with the petitioner, the mayor was there with me, that wasn't something that the petitioner wanted to accept, so just FYI.
Yeah, well, NP has almost some impossibilities in it. I mean, one of the issues that, you know, I've seen in NP is it specifically says you can have veterinary clinics, but they can't operate 24 hours, which
No emergency
really, even if you're not doing emergency, you need to board the animals overnight after surgery.
Exactly.
So it's almost, there's an inconsistency between what NP says you can do and what it allows you to do.
And it probably-
So I agree 100%, we need to look at NP, and you guys can add that to your list of things to
Right.
do.
Yeah.
Might need to
And
be a
fix
little bit
it.
larger
Yeah.
of a
But
building. or
when I
something.
looked at this
Yeah.
parcel, I mean, I will say, I looked at this parcel like I looked at Burkett's parcel. And I said, and, I mean, just as a natural thing, if I'm not getting caught up in the politics or
right.
anything else, I'm looking at it going, NP.
Right.
That was what it would occur to me to be.
Yeah, and you know, Peter, I just make a personal comment. The politics behind this one, it's an emotional issue. The politics behind it have become somewhat difficult. There's an awful lot of stuff floating around out there. I did write a letter to the editor trying to level set some of the claims that were being made, because I simply thought the claims being made by certain people in public were simply inaccurate. And I mean, as a result, I've been accused of, you know, lying and financial impropriety. So I just want to get that out there. So ignoring the politics for a minute, though, I mean, you know, I agree with Peter that property as a transitional zone makes sense as NP, and certainly to help the community, to help people, you guys could perhaps work on it, but it is what it is.
And my mother-in-law lived on Merry-Go-Round Way, which was the first street there as you pull off of Park Avenue. And I got to know a lot of the residents that live right there. And Herman and Irene Baker live right up next to Doc O'Brien's property. And you could walk out of their patio, they had a little patio, little strip of grass and a wall, and then this would be on top of that. And it's just not a commercial piece of property. Neighborhood professional, we talked, you know, Chris and I and the mayor talked, and, you know, that was something that we probably fit with some modifications. But commercial just doesn't do it for me.
Residential, I don't think residential fits either anymore.
Well, that is a problem. I think you're right, it's not a residential parcel.
Right.
No.
So it's residential right now with a special exception, but
Right.
if
Well,
we
the
can fix
question
the
is,
NP.
do you go and make it NP, or do we do the same thing we did on that other parcel, which is nothing?
I would recommend that we not make any changes unless the petitioner comes forth and asks for
I
changes.
would agree with that.
That's right.
The petitioner's here, he has his.
No, it's not, this
No,
is a work session only.
That was not to go into,
Yeah,
not to go into that, but,
it's a work session only.
yeah, I mean, I will say for the record, I would be willing to entertain NP. I have not heard anything yet that would tell me it should be a CC.
Right, and
Okay.
I'll say again for the record, that I'd be absolutely willing to support MP and try to make some changes. And
I would like
Well-
to be involved in those discussions also.
And I think the planning commission would be willing to exercise flexibility with regard to the zoning district too. Certainly would be appropriate. Okay?
All right.
We're ready to move on to Carnival Grounds? Okay? This was not a unanimous recommendation on the part of our members. We talked about it a long time. You tried to get us to decide early, and we pulled back and said, no, we need to talk about it and think about it some more. And there were different schools of thought. One school of thought was, while it's private property, historically it has been used in a variety of ways, in a private way, in a multitude of different community uses, and commercial as well, but certainly never residential the way it was originally zoned. Okay? From that standpoint, we thought that there was a rationale in terms of its historical use not fitting its designation. Okay, and it was appropriate to make a correction in that regard. So that was one school of thought. Another school of thought, again, because we have concern about the amount of traffic, the amount of congestion already on 27, and we know that in our desire to develop downtown and to steer development in that way, we have a management issue in terms of development along 27. There was concern, the more we spread out the development on 27, more of an issue it becomes. So surely if we're going to see more, and there will be more, just from the amount of through traffic that's coming through, we would be better off from a management standpoint to localize it. And from that standpoint, stepping up to community commercial, we felt might be the lesser of the evils that were out there. Those were two of the considerations in favor of it, which ultimately more votes were in that way. There certainly were at least two of our group that did not feel it should be changed.
But you know, at the Carnival Grounds, Jennifer really crystallized it. You were there, and she said, if you look at the Carnival Grounds, take away the emotion, the history, look at the, is it properly zoned, R2? And the answer is clearly no. And that's why the vote was majority to change it. But there is a lot of emotion. I don't envy you guys at all. Because you have a big thing here. I mean, I like to see the fire company satisfied and the town satisfied. How do we get that accomplished? You know, does the town reserve a right to buy that land and sell it? I heard a suggestion from a resident that said, you know, keep it residential, and then when Harrison LaShire, if that happens, we trade fire company land there, for that land there, do a land swap, and they can develop that, sell it commercially, and they can have their pot of gold if they need it, and we have our town center for people as an option, if we kept it residential. I heard that from a resident.
I heard another suggestion of splitting it at the public hearing, of making part of it residential and part of it commercial, so it's not 100%, you know, one way or the other. That was another one.
I like mixed use.
There you go. What a thought.
the two members who voted against, what was their rationale?
I was one, and it wasn't really a vote, you know. There were a few reasons. One, it was all sort of last minute, because it had been in everything up to that point. It had been to stay residential. And then at this meeting, you know, so people had come to public hearings and they testified and they thought, you know, it was staying as it was. And then at this meeting, just like poof, you know, it just changed. So I had a problem with that. The other thing,
But this is an open meeting, right? This wasn't a secret meeting.
no, it wasn't a
no.
secret
Claim
meeting.
this was a secret meeting.
Oh, no, no, no.
So I can tell you.
We don't have secret meetings.
No secret meetings.
Unfortunately, things would go along.
I know, right? And it's not necessarily that I'm completely opposed to it. It's partly a process, but it's partly, and I will tell you, because I have it written down, actually, you already saw what I wrote down. I would make sure, and that, because mostly, and we had this discussion, I think, the last meeting, or maybe it was an MXD meeting that we had, that zoning is zoning and implementation is different. Like, you change the zone, you don't worry until someone wants to develop it, you know, what may or may not happen.
What they're planning.
Or what.
Yeah.
But what I would just want to make sure is whether, so the property goes commercial, whether if in the future the fire company wants to sell it, would they be required to disclose to any future purchaser the underperforming level of the intersection and the extensive mitigation that would be required if that parcel is developed? If they are not required to disclose that, would the town have the legal authority to require a future purchaser who did not know the extensive and expensive level of mitigation? Would the town be able to force the purchaser to pay for all of it or for the majority of it? Or,
I think the answer would be no and yes, if I'm reading that they probably don't have to disclose, but the town would be able to require whoever wanted to develop it to fix everything.
Under
not develop.
Under the adequate facilities
Okay.
protection order.
okay, I'm just,
General terms,
I'm
yes.
Yeah, very general, right, I'm just talking very general
Right,
terms.
right.
If they can find a sucker.
okay, so my
You don't
third
know
third
what
point
they
was,
can
if
sell
the
it.
town cannot require a purchaser to pay full or most cost of mitigation, is town prepared to dedicate its own resources to mitigate the traffic nightmare once the parcel is
No,
developed?
we would never do that.
Okay, so you're sure it's been researched and you know that,
Well, no, I'm being asked something like
well, he's saying yes.
Okay.
He's saying
We
yes.
said yes in general, we just
What
went through this
No.
with
What
Tom.
I'm saying
Wait,
is
wait.
there are certain provisions on the APF
Right,
that
Similar to Pink.
require mitigation
right,
if someone wishes to develop. a
right,
property.
I understand that. And if it's, like, is there any limitation on the expense, or is there, I mean, if it's a few $1 million, can they, I mean, I don't know, but I think it's just something to definitely consider as, you know, as
Can-
part of this process.
I'm not discounting that thought, but can I ask the question from purely a planning perspective? And here's the perspective. The discussion we just had about the O'Brien property, that was based strictly on planning
Right.
principles, right? The west side of 27 is transition.
Right.
Neighborhood professional serves as the transition to the residential. This is no longer a residential property, it should be NP.
Hey,
That was the
I'm not-
logic.
I'm not concerned about it, I'm just putting that out there, as long as the town is confident
Oh.
that it won't have to spend millions of dollars, then I'm fine.
And Pank, actually the Pank property, they just tried to develop that, they came in with plans to develop that. And
They went
either
away.
They couldn't get access, or the price to get it would be phenomenal. Oh, build another access to the highway,
Right.
you know, would be phenomenal.
Right.
So it didn't happen.
Right.
And the carnival grounds would deal with that same kind
Well,
of.
they actually withdrew their request.
Yeah.
Right, well, they couldn't get there, they couldn't get their access.
Right. Now, Twin Arch is almost at a point of failure now.
Right, I mean, I
Right.
think that counts,
Well,
right,
they
so that counts
also,
in
they
planning
also would have been
principles too,
taking on the
right?
full responsibility for the mitigation themselves. That was the
And I think
trade-off.
The question is, would the town be paying the mitigation? And I'm saying the town would not pony up for mitigation. They'd have to do it.
Right, all of it.
I have a good
100%.
idea of where Chris was going with this, and I think we have a very similar, once again, we're gonna agree on something, so please, somebody take
I
a
don't
picture of
know.
this. I've been going to the planning commission meetings, and I've been talking a lot with Mr. Edwards about exactly what planning is. And planning is certainly not about the owner of the property, it's about the piece of property. Should it be zoned in a particular fashion? And I think we're having a tendency to look at the owner and not the property. And, you know, that's where this emotional thing comes in.
I think it's people who want to give them CC have brought that up a lot. I don't think it's the people who don't want to. So, I mean, that might be true,
I
but
don't know
it's,
of anybody that has wanted to grant this to the fire company that said that they're telling us stories and they're not telling us the truth. And
what? Telling stories and not telling the truth?
How can we, well, they're gonna go off and sell it, and they're lying to
Oh.
us right now.
Oh, well,
No.
we don't need to go there.
And you know, and that bothers me a whole
Well,
lot.
we don't need to
I don't
go
think
there.
that's an issue at this table right now.
Where I
at
was
all.
headed, sort of, is where Bob was headed. The original question was, as a member who didn't go along with the CC,
Right.
if the rationale, I understand that the explanation of what
Do
you
you,
said.
why do you care right now why I didn't go along with CC? Once again, what is that? What does that got to do with planning?
Oh, I'm just
I mean,
trying
you're-
to understand the different opinions.
No, I
how-
think you're trying to like create some issue. Like, what was your reason for not? It was pretty much sprung on us at the last minute. That's my rationale.
Okay,
Okay. Okay.
all right.
Okay.
And personally,
So what if it wasn't?
What I don't think is going on here at this table is people telling stories about not trusting.
I'm not talking about here at the table.
Okay.
I'm talking about in-town public hearings at these.
Right.
People are
But-
getting up, and I just don't believe this.
right. and
But
when I sit
wait,
here
we
at
don't
this
believe it,
table-
and I don't think that that's really what this discussion is about. This discussion is about, are we going to keep it CC? And we are, and so I brought up things for the town to consider, and the town is very comfortable with them, and I think that we're done. I don't think it's like, why didn't you do something that came up, you didn't vote this way at the last minute because, and why was that,
Right,
I
was
looked at that
so
plan
let me-
as, I personally don't want to see it ever change. I think it's the only gathering spot in town for these people, for our townspeople.
I think we all
But
felt that way.
Given that, looking at the
I know we
plan
did.
and the property, I voted to change it because without the emotion.
Right.
Jennifer persuaded me.
Yeah.
Right, that's what I was driving towards. If
I
the-
didn't have any emotion. I mean, I'm not emotional about keeping it as it is. I didn't want to decide something within like 5 minutes.
Sure.
Okay?
My question really was about, the reason why I was asking why, I was looking for the rationale behind not going with CC. I was looking
Because it
for-
was a sudden change from what we had decided the entire time. I already mentioned that.
But there wasn't a pure planning perspective. In other words, again, the
Chris,
analogy I was trying to use
Chris,
was,
over.
I think you guys are
Over.
overthinking it.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
It was very, if I
think
could
we
just
have agreement.
interject one thought, and then I
There
think we're
wasn't a
done.
planning
But,
perspective.
and I've only been on the Planning and Zoning Commission
Oh, my
now
God.
for about a year.
The second
So
time.
I didn't hear a lot of other people discussing this, but when it came down to it, it was very simple. It was a planning decision. And we at this table, we're all emotional about it because we've all had experiences on that piece of property that we'd like to see for a long time. But when it comes down to it, it's a planning decision. What are we using it for? And it's not residential.
Well, I mean, if everybody wants to get into like what's a planning decision and what's not, the other issue is that there were different people at this table the entire time that we were working on the master plan, and then there was change very quickly before we voted. And Patty was one of the people who came on. She wasn't part of all the discussions when the Carnival Grounds was rejected for CC, and then at the last minute, at this table, it changes, and I decide, well, I've heard all these people for the past few months, and I've been to these public hearings and all these things that, it's not just like, oh, based on planning principles, because now Jennifer, who actually admits she changed her mind that day at the table, I don't think it's like, oh, Leslie doesn't know about sound planning principles because she didn't want to change her opinion, that was sprung up at the table in 5 minutes. I just think this is totally, actually totally inappropriate discussion.
I think your issue is just Bob's issue. Whenever I try and run something through as an emergency measure, and Bob says, no, I'm all for it, but no, it shouldn't be an emergency, we'll cover it next month.
Well,
That's exactly what I hear going on here.
and
that's
it was a change
good,
from
yeah.
something that had been
Yeah,
the same way for months.
Right,
So
and
I
it's just-
really,
yeah.
I think
You
it's
didn't think it was-
actually,
yeah.
I think it's sound principles to go, well, wait, let's see. Do
Mm-hmm.
we really want to do this? Do we want to decide this in 5 minutes when for the past however many months.
Well-
We've kept
I
it
think that-
as,
I think the
so
question that
basically,
started that whole
that
discussion
is,
again
that
was,
is where it
was
came from.
Jennifer asking, now, we're supposed to take into consideration what we just heard at this public hearing the other day, right? I believe Heather told her, well, you can.
Well,
It's-
if that would
it's
be a
part of it,
consideration,
yeah.
yes,
Well,
to
yeah.
listen.
What are the
Well,
council
yeah,
thoughts?
you
Well-
listen to people, there's all kinds of
Heather's
different
guide.
opinions.
I'm already, I'm state, I'm voting for it.
I'm voting for it.
To change it to commercial.
Change it to commercial.
Yeah, I think we're all fine with it. As I said when I made my point, I just want to be clear that the town isn't going to be stuck with, you know, something.
Yeah, no,
That's it.
if I wasn't
That's it.
confident, if I wasn't
That's it.
confident of that, I would be thinking at it very differently, like I-70. I mean, the reason I voted against the
Right.
South I-70
Right.
annexation is because I was really not confident at all that we weren't gonna get stuck with a big bill.
Right.
When
So
I
that
voted
was
this,
the only,
I
you know,
think, actually, Bill summed it up. Bill said, you know, the property's being used for a variety of ways. And we think of it as the carnival grounds, but it's currently be used in addition to the Fireman's Carnival, the Lions Club Carnival. We now have, just recently, we've added the Spring and Fall Fests. We've added the 4th of July event. They now have the Scottish Festival up there. The car dealership sells on that property twice a year. And
Yard
this
sale.
weekend, there's like some
There was a
big,
yard
there are
sale.
yard sales. But, you know, and there's some, I guess like there's a big green egg thing up there this coming weekend.
and you will notice, like, when the yard sale is that 27 and Main Street will be totally backed up. Absolutely, totally backed up.
Oh, yeah.
The issue
Oh,
is,
yeah.
traditionally, as a residential property, they were allowed basically either as a non-conforming use or as a special exception, but I think it was non-conforming use.
I have no record of it.
Right.
I asked a while back, but
Right,
nobody
right,
knew.
and that's right. I asked Heather
I
to
know,
research
I
it.
don't like to pull answers out that aren't.
I asked Heather to research it because the question that I thought citizens had at the meeting, which were very sound questions, which was,
Leave it out there.
why are you changing this now? And the reason I got back from the fire company was, we could be shut down at any minute because in theory, under our zoning, the only thing we can technically do is have the carnival because we were doing that as a non-conforming use. When we added the 4th of July thing, really, you know, we really should, you know, we're not zoned for that. When we
Right,
added the
well, that
Lions
was-
Club
that
thing,
was
we're
true.
not zoned for that. We
That
added the
was true.
Spring and Fall Fest.
Baseball,
We're not,
football fields.
we're not zoned for that,
Right, right,
okay?
right.
They also, I know they also want to expand the building, as they say, we'd like to get beyond the 1980s
Right,
style.
right,
They really can't do, they're not zoned for that. And so if we want them to continue to use the property and make money on it, we really need to make it commercial, because if somebody were to come in here and raise a fit, in theory, we probably could be caught in the situation where we may have to shut down those events.
But even if
Because
they
they're
chose to
recent.
sell it, commercial makes more
It's
sense.
what it is. I mean, it is. It's a
So-
commercial part, but the reason for the change, because the question I had from citizens was, why are they asking for the change now? And the reason is because they've added a whole bunch of events, which are in theory not really
Which
grandfathered
actually they
in
never
as a
mentioned.
non-conforming use.
They never mentioned when they testified
No,
So
they
it sounds
don't.
like.
to us. That's interesting. They never mentioned that once when
So
they,
I, well, see, I asked,
Okay.
see, I went back and I was like, what, and I thought, what's the
Uh-huh.
reason? And that's
Right.
the reason.
okay.
So it sounds like, Peter, you're a yes.
I mean, yeah.
Oh, I mean, I'm actually yes now, but because I've had time to consider it.
And then,
You were just opposed to it being done real fast. and
Yeah,
understand
I
that.
was.
Sure.
and, I've been struggling with this one for months. And, I just, for months and months I've been struggling, but the arguments, I'm sorry, not the arguments, the reasoning behind what y'all have said here and what the council has said,
But Chris, what was your reason for not knowing right away that you wanted it to be commercial? What
it was strictly emotional, and that's wrong.
Well-
He just wanted to be on the other side of the fence from me.
No, I mean, my reasoning in being so hesitant is the emotional argument, and that's not a valid argument when you're doing a rezoning, and
Well,
It wasn't mine, just so you know, just to be clear, it wasn't
Check it
the
out.
emotional.
right, and
10 years ago, I supported
separate.
leaving it, this came up 10 years ago, the last month, when I supported leaving it residential. But then, there was just the carnival there, and there was the Lions Club Carnival. They just had 2 carnivals. It wasn't, you know, I mean, there were, the JCs were doing things, but they're doing a lot more things there to make a lot more money. And at some point, you know, they're operating there
You can
beyond
get-
their zoning.
Clearly,
You could
they
get
were
a mayor in here that would
operating
decide to
outside of
You
enforce-
their-
can get a mayor in here
Yeah.
who would enforce that and say, you can't do those things anymore. Or a citizen who starts to complain, and you can't do those things anymore.
I-
You
I-
need to make it what it is.
I think you have consensus.
I think we're good.
Yeah, I think we're done
I think
there.
we're good.
So Chris, did you,
I agree with the council.
That's twice tonight, Chris and I agree. That's a monumental situation.
and Councilman Strong is against that,
Okay.
so there is.
Do you know
not
his
consensus.
reasoning?
Well, there's a
Sorry.
consensus, there's just
No.
There is no majority consensus.
No,
I
but,
just-
but clearly there's a,
we'd have 4 out of 5 in favor of it.
Yeah, it's, you have your majority.
Yes.
80%.
It was a really good discussion.
That
Well,
person,
no.
car company does sell it, I think they'll
We're
be on
done,
a roll
we're
of
done.
her for them.
I guess we'll talk later.
Absolutely.
I don't think they'll see another.
but the nice thing,
company.
it just,
They may
you know,
not need it.
the nice thing is, you've got, and, you know, folks from community can't comment tonight, but good discussions, all viewpoints are shown, nothing's done in secret
That's
meetings
right.
as alleged, and the rest,
Sunshine laws.
this is good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see any reason to change your, you know, I mean, I think your recommendations were excellent. I appreciate it, that you can see, we really only
Right.
battled a few properties
Yep.
out of the
Yep.
whole town. This is pretty narrow scope, I think.
Yeah.
This was not an easy decision for me to say yes,
No,
commercial.
I know it wasn't, and you talked to
Yeah.
me several times since then.
Yeah, I voted against it last time. I just became convinced by seeing
And
that
I've been
doing
against
four
it.
more things there, we want them to do more things there, and make more money off it.
Two comments. Along with trying to bring this master plan down the home stretch, we've had two subcommittees that are working diligently on the two, MXD and OPE, okay? And we hope, if not by year end, well, I think by year end, we'll have drafts for you on that. The other very, very significant project, Heather and Barney and staff are taking the lead on that, and that's the RFP for the Highway 27 corridor study. So going to be a very, very critical study in terms of helping us understand, what we're likely dealing with there. Very, very useful to us. One last comment. Although it's not physically located in the master plan, it's adjacent to it, and that's the water resource element, the WRE, okay? And I would urge you to go back and look at that in the recommendations the Water and Sewer Commission have in that regard.
I'd like to make one comment. I sat in a lot of meetings with, and it's amazing the amount of work y'all did on this thing. I think it deserves a lot of credit. Just about change we did nothing, it's really nothing, if you think about it.
Well,
I'm looking at just a few changes we made.
this was probably groundbreaking in a way, though, that you had a council and you had a planning commission sitting down.
Before we end, I got a couple more
And Bill
comments.
promised to double my salary on the commission.
I've got comments.
Hey!
I
Oh, am I doubled?
What's that?
He said you're gonna double his salary.
On the commission. My commission salary.
Yeah.
Bill did that for all of you. He told me
Yeah,
to double
me
it.
too.
I think Chris had some more?
Yeah, we don't want to short sheet Mr. Everett.
I need, wait a minute, Chris,
Yep.
I have something on the tail end of the carnival grounds.
Yep.
Can everybody go to page 77?
Yeah?
Yep.
We're there. You and I are there already.
Can you also go to the map, the designated, my line, hang on a second. Yeah, go to designated comprehensive land use map in front of 67, and if you can sort of flip flop.
Okay.
Because there is now a consensus, or a
Majority.
potential consensus, majority item, for the carnival grounds, we should address, and I need to talk to the property owner, but, there's that little block
Residential.
of residential
Oh, okay.
owned by Todd Buckman, and that is not good land use to.
You mean that little square on the corner? I
Yeah,
didn't know somebody else owned that little corner there.
yeah, there's a house there that's owned by Todd Buckman, so we should, he might
Is
not want his property
Okay.
rezoned
You-
for,
Is that the property that's just opposite what's,
It's existing land use.
trying to see where you're,
Right.
I'm on 77, where,
oh, okay.
This gray spot here.
Is this,
oh,
We don't.
I'm
What
sorry,
page
I'm
are we
looking
on?
at the map.
yeah,
map
let's
is
make sure we're all
on
looking at the
page
same
67.
spot.
Yeah, look, go to the designated comprehensive land use
She
map.
said it was in front of page 67.
That's not it.
oh, I see, okay.
You
And,
said the map
and
is
there's
in
a-
front of 67.
Oh, it's the second map.
yeah, there's a little, low density
I
residential.
think that's the wrong,
That's the wrong one.
that's the wrong map.
Yeah, you want
You
the
want
designated
designated
That's nil.
comprehensive land use
turn to page 67, and there's a map in front of that. Oh, there's two maps in front of 67.
Well, the
One
map
comprehensive
really
land
right in
use
front of
plan.
it. Like,
It doesn't really matter, because it's
Well, no.
still the little square block.
Oh.
Okay,
Okay,
now
the
I'm
little
trying to
square
sort
block.
out, see, here's 27.
Or a diamond.
Right, this little square block here.
It's the
Oh,
diamond.
that little light
I think
yellow.
it's
Little
here.
diamond.
So it's
It's the diamond.
diamond.
It's the diamond.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
It's the diamond.
It's wedged between industrial
Oh, here, here, okay.
Bill, that's,
It's a
and
diamond.
Well, if
commercial.
there's a house
Yeah.
on it, wouldn't it be RE?
that's.
Well, yes, but with the
Oh, so it's-
rezoning recommendation, and then this was an oversight, and we need to reach out to Mr. Buckman, but what is the feeling about, perhaps rezoning that parcel of land commercial as well?
Yeah.
It's only 19.
Yeah, they operate a personal business out of it.
That home is a business?
Yeah,
I think we need to talk to Mr. Buckman and find
Yeah,
out,
that's what I think.
we can, but
because we can't change a home to.
Yeah, I'd like to, I guess I don't wanna cause problems for him either.
nor do I.
Contact him and see if he wants to change it.
And if he does wish to change it, can I facilitate, because then I need to.
What's the offer?
Send letters out.
Well, it would probably go, it would either go to CC or industrial, probably, because those are the two ones on either side of it. I
I
don't
mean,
know
is
which one
there-
you want.
For a public hearing, because if you're having a public hearing on changes, I need to.
We need to have that on the
Yes.
next list, right?
Yes,
Why don't you talk to him and ask him?
You need to go ahead and
but I'm
approach
not
it.
going to see you guys, I'm not going to have this group together.
Well, Heather, here's what I
That
would
is
do on
what
this.
I'm looking for
I
direction.
would contact Mr. Buckman, find out what he wants, and then remember our discussion about contacting each council person individually, so there's no open meeting discussions. I
Okay,
mean, no closed meeting things, and just kind of find out what the feel is, and if,
Well, it needs to run through, it should run through planning first.
The question is.
you know, planning's gonna meet again
yes, it is.
before our meeting.
Plan's
Yeah.
gonna meet twice, October the 20th and some other time before.
I
that.
would,
November.
Right, but what I'm saying is,
I need
we
to
would
have
put
it-
it some way, at the next council meeting, we will designate it as something.
which is a
And we'll
week
then
from
go to
now.
planning for a recommendation, for agreement
She
or
has
not.
to know before we.
I'm-
And this doesn't have to come back until January, that's
No,
not.
no,
This is
because it needs to be in
Right,
this
and what I'm
plan
saying is, when it comes to the council at the meeting coming up
next Monday,
next
or this
Monday.
Monday.
we need to have it one way or the other.
Yes.
So kind of figure out what the council's thought process is on that from polling everybody individually, and make it that way. All right?
Sorry, is your,
Planning will then see it the end of
And
October,
be able
and
to
they'll
tell
either
Tom
say
by the
okay or
20th.
not okay. I'm gonna make an assumption that you guys aren't gonna care, CC or industrial, because it's wedged between the two.
I mean, we would even we would be comfortable in giving her latitude
To do it
even
either way.
to do it
Well, and that's
their
what I'm trying
preference.
to get now.
Right.
Can we give her that latitude?
Provided,
We
that's,
give you that
Yes.
latitude, and I
Yes.
really think it's the owners.
Yeah,
well, and
whatever
that's
he
what I'm
wants it to
saying, we
be.
need to talk
So
to,
whatever the
that's why
owner
I'm
wants.
asking you guys now.
And I'm
Well,
thinking
what
the
if-
council's
what-
gonna say the same thing.
If he wants, if he wants to
Yes.
keep it as is there an issue?
5 are saying.
No.
I don't know,
don't
probably
care.
the being is
But
it.
it's on Twin Arch Road, right?
Right.
If he wants
Yep.
to change it, but that.
We're all in
that's his
agreement.
call and
Okay.
agreement.
4 out
Yeah,
of 5
I
of
think-
the council's with you too. so
I think everybody
make it
says
happen.
if he wants to leave it RE, or if he wants it commercial to join the farming, or if he wants it industrial
Okay, I
to
just didn't want to
join the
arbitrarily
industrial,
just start changing
whichever way he
numbers.
wants.
Heather, do you know
Yes.
how big that property is?
I do not offhand, and I'm sorry.
No, it's okay, just curious.
I mean, I would say
It
it's
looks
probably
like
about a
like
couple
an
acres.
acre.
Yeah.
so-
Well, the carnival grounds are 36 acres,
Yeah.
so, you know, it's,
Barney, get your finger out, you do that.
you know, it's no more than 2 or 3.
I was gonna say 3 or 4 acres,
Okay.
1.3?
Yeah.
so. Yeah. You know, but find out what he wants and give it that way to the council at the council meeting. So
Okay.
we present it that way, and then it'll go to planning, and I think planning's already said, we
I
don't
mean,
care.
I know,
And
but,
then we'll get it back in
Doesn't matter.
November all set.
but I have to reach out to
Mr.
our,
Buckman.
and the adjoining property owners beforehand.
All right.
Right.
Right,
So
which
that's-
would be Pang and Carnival.
I do a radius,
Okay.
yes. So I can, I don't
Right.
wanna
Yes.
wait till the 20th.
Is there anything else?
Okay, Heather, that's,
Sorry, thank you.
you got that, all right.
You had some other questions?
Yeah,
Right?
Councilman Everidge has a couple of things. And if no one has anything else, I'll let him go ahead and touch on his.
Just general comments. Heather, we need version number on the document, so as this document changes, we know which version we're dealing with. And the plan needs updating based, all the water, anytime we talk about water, the discussion should be updated to reflect the new water allocation ordinance and how that's done. There's a couple places here on the goals where we talk about different ordinances. I'm just assuming as part of the council passing the master plan, the goals will be met by planning starting to do ordinances, right? Because we call it out as goals.
Right, that's actually the implementation, it'll be
Good.
part of the implementation of the plan.
Okay, and then the one on page 118, chapter 6, transportation.
Okay, hang on 1 second.
Okay? Improving connectivity?
Under improving connectivity, about that western bypass, no, sorry, Bob. Heather, and first of all, my disclaimer, when this was passed by town council, I was the president of the Summit Ridge Homeowners Association. But on page 118, the Scotch Heather Candace Road connector,
119.
119
thank you,
now.
119. The records will reflect that the town council removed that connector road. It should not be in the master plan. The town council has removed that. It's already gone. And that was done by a town council vote a couple of years ago. The record will reflect that. So that should not be in there.
Ended the road right there.
Affirmative, that is
Where
correct.
it is.
It was
Where it is
supposed to
now.
run
Where's
all the
this?
way up to
Which one?
And
Kansas.
if
That
you
is
look
correct.
at it, it's a cliff
Yeah.
at the end of that road.
It'd be an expensive
It
bridge.
would be a real expensive thing.
Right, but the reason why I bring it up again, my disclaimer is at the time I was the Summit Ridge HOA president that I fought for this, but I'm just pointing out that if you review the record, the town council at the time, I think John Medvey was council president, the council voted unanimously to remove that road, so it shouldn't be in this plan. The council said no.
Yeah,
And
double
it
check that.
wasn't, it was put back as an 11-hour
Okay,
thing. But, so your recommendation is that
Proposed, yeah.
Scotch Heather Candace be removed in total
And
from
I-
page 119.
yeah, council already said
I would
it.
go along with that, because I remember all our discussions, even in the last year or two, we discussed it on streets and roads, and I think we never really felt that it should go back in, it just was not.
And
Why?
you-
I mean, am I remembering correctly from what streets and roads passed on?
I know that that someone brought it to your attention, Chris Spar,
Right.
probably on a few occasions.
Yeah, but, I'm sorry, but again, the council voted to remove it, so, I mean,
But I think what Heather is saying is the planning commission put it back in.
yeah, okay.
But Chris
so-
is asking the council if we want
Right,
to strike
right,
it.
right. I
And
know,
I'm
I understand
saying-
that.
And I'm saying, I would concur with Chris on striking it. I think as I recall, Streets and Roads had felt that way. The parcel was gonna go through, which was Green Tree, had been restructured to not use this access road any longer. And when you look at the access road, it's almost an impossibility.
Well, and it's like,
Unless you wanna build an
you
interstate
can't,
bridge.
Rising Ridge Road is a collector road that is built properly. Okay, Scotch Heather is supposed to be the continuation of Rising Ridge all the way over to Candace Drive. That was the goal. From McDonald's down the other Rising Ridge, across 144, and then it picks up being a nice road designed to do exactly what it's supposed to do, move people. But at both ends, it's a neighborhood road now. And you're not gonna get past that, take it out.
Okay,
Right, because you can't get into Summit Ridge except for off Buffalo Road or off Main Street. I think that's why it was in there initially, so that you could go right there
Yeah, that-
and go and cut through. That's right.
Go all
Right,
the way
right,
to
right.
Candace Drive.
That was the
Right.
thinking
Yeah.
in theory,
Right,
but
Yeah.
that was the thought, I
Yeah.
agree, but that was the thought in theory.
Right.
but I think you've got all four councilmen saying remove it.
Chris is going to make sure of it, since he fought to keep it out to begin with.
Previous council said remove it, so.
And, well, like I
But we're
said,
talking about the present
Streets and
council.
Roads looked at it, I mean, while I was doing Streets and Roads the last 2 years or so, we looked at it a couple times, and our thought process was, when you go out there, it's not practical.
Right.
No, it's not a,
Not
it's
anymore.
not a collector road.
And well,
It's
people
a
on Main
neighborhood
Street
road.
wanted it, nobody on Scotch Heather.
Well, of course they did.
Sure.
all right.
Nobody on Scotch Heather wants it.
Planning, do
Right.
you concur?
I don't.
No, I concur. I know the issue's trying to put that in.
I can as well.
On paper, it looks like a good idea, but I don't think it's practical.
Hey, I signed the petition, so I know that I have to be consistent.
Absolutely, absolutely. All
Well, the
right.
thought process for
One
people
more?
on Main Street is it would reduce some traffic on Main Street.
It would actually reduce some traffic through Summit Ridge, because instead of the people who live here
Right.
still have to come down and then go all the way back up.
No,
Yeah.
and I see that,
Yeah.
and, you know, normally I would say you leave it in, but when I actually went out there and looked at the problem,
Yeah.
it's like,
I-
no, it's never, nobody,
Okay,
it's
done
not gonna
deal.
happen.
I'm removing it.
You're removing it.
It's like, say, put Richmond
All right.
in Grand Canyon, you know?
Last,
And Chris says there's only one more.
last one, page 48.
Keep putting my book away.
He keeps coming up with one more.
Stop closing your book, Bob, and he'll
We
stop
still
talking.
carry Gillis Falls.
We do.
Gillis Falls ain't gonna happen.
Actually, I'm not sure.
I'm
There is-
not sure either.
Yeah, there's actually been,
There's been some
some revival in the idea of dams for water use in the last, and so, I'm
Even
not
if-
sure that, I'm not,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not confident it's not gonna
It's
happen.
to recognize it.
Besides, this is what Rita made a huge deal
Okay,
about.
this is-
Yeah, you can't just take it out, because, I mean, from.
Okay, we're good, I withdraw.
Oh, no, I'm
Okay,
gonna
let's
keep
go home.
talking, I'm gonna keep
I
talking,
withdraw.
because you kept talking like before. Well, let me just tell you the reasoning, though, is that I'm not sure if it's,
I
you know,
withdraw
she
the
knows a
motion.
lot about water, but from her perspective, is if this is taken out, then Carroll County will eventually develop it, because it's sort of like, you know, it's keeping them at bay, because it's in our plan,
Right,
so.
and all of that land.
And it's all water, it's
All
all,
that land, I think they own like 89.
yeah, the county owns that land, so it's pretty important
And
to
their
keep that in.
maps actually show everybody's packing up, and I'm not ready to go. Their maps now actually show the Gillis Falls county-owned land to protect that, reservoir.
And if you look at a land use map, the fact that that's continued for many, many years, we benefited from that. It's buffered us.
I withdraw my
A lot of
motion.
drilling in there.
Yep. Yep.
What else you got,
Okay.
Heather? I'm not gonna go till you're happy.
Thank you. You're a-
Anything else, anybody?
Yeah.
I'd never get out of town hall, that's what I waited for.
Heather, you all right? When are you back from vacation? Not to rush you, but just so I know for our next MXD meeting, so I can put a,
October 29th.
29th,
will be
okay.
my first day
okay,
back.
so it'll be like an early
Okay.
November.
Chris, you already,
Okay?
So Peter, have we worked through the majority of what might have been
I mean, I think we
the
got through
suggested
everything
changes?
that I had, that I had thought that people had raised with us.
I've got some typos that I'll send you, that's it.
Yeah, I mean, I've got some things I've tagged in here. I don't know if we need to bring them up here, like there's something on this one map where I was like, what in the world is this? This black thing, existing material artery roads, I think because it's a neighborhood, that can't be right.
what,
Heather?
The map right after
That's a
page
question.
28.
what, Peter, what?
Okay, the map
Are
right
we
after
ready to
page
go?
28 is the regionalism policies map.
It's a regional setting.
It's got this, it says existing regional traffic arteries. There's this big dark line that like runs
Oh,
like
that's
right
Rising
through a
Ridge.
court.
Oh,
This can't be right.
that's Rising Ridge.
Yeah, but does it run right through the?
Because it can't go any further north, it
Okay.
hooks a hard left.
My house is right here.
I don't know, the lines can be crazy.
So this is actually Rising Ridge Rising, okay. But this is rising over here, and this Rising Ridge here?
The engineering department.
Oh, that's the rail line.
Yeah.
Okay. So we now show it, okay, all right. Heather, I see, well, I put a note here that said, what is this? So
Well,
Bob has
now
answered
you know.
that question.
Now you
Bob
know.
has answered that question, because I was looking at it going, that court looks like it's cut off, but I guess we really do cut it off.
Yeah, there's,
Okay, well, that's, I mean, like I said, I got a lot of little questions like that, most of which I'll probably get answered by asking you something.
Okay?
I do have something, and it's, and I promised that, we would have a rough draft of this, at this meeting, even though it turned into a work session. But it's, a rough draft for the corridor study that we are ready to, and I want to thank Barney very much for helping.
It's rough.
It's rough, but this is the first one
all right.
that we've done.
Exciting.
And instead of making it perfect, Barney, we're going to allow others to make it perfect with us. So, we're looking for comments. Barney had a lot of issue letting this go.
Well, that's a planning thing at this point, so we don't have to bother with it.
Okay, and this will be on our website. I know that there are
Thank you.
members of the
Great.
community that are interested in this. And
Yes.
Barney looks
Great
forward to
job
your
on
feedback.
this, guys.
And I have to apologize to the subcommittee that I didn't forward
It's all
that
right.
to you before getting it out, but I promised it would go out tonight.
Everybody take a good look on planning commission and
Yeah,
give
thank you,
feedback
guys.
to Heather and to Barney.
And the contract language still isn't in there, but Barney's continuing to work on that.
Great.
He's our
And
contract
don't
guy.
forget, tomorrow night it's 5:30, Watkins Park, Town Appreciation Dinner.
The council will buy dinner for y'all for doing such a great job.
I have this policy. I don't like spending government money, but when the government is going to buy me a meal, I am going to take it.
I forgot to respond to that.
They didn't call you?
No.
I got that.
Oh, I bet you can sneak in.
Sorry, Tony, you're out.
I'm walking backwards like I'm leaving.
5:30.
I think we are.
Is that rain or
I talked to
shine?
staff today, we have a good crowd, like
Rain or
104 or
shine.
something like that.
Great.
So
Great,
we're gonna
great,
have a
great.
good crowd, and the weather's supposed to be nice. Carter Q is, doing it.
Wow.
They're gonna have the turkey, and they're gonna have brisket and pork, and I think, coleslaw, mac and cheese, so just, and cornbread.
Wow.
So it is, yeah, well, I showed up on the important stuff.
Is it us and a guest or us and a family?
I think it's a guess.
Yes, about him.
Good
You bring
brisket.
some guests, right?
Appreciation.
You can bring one.
I missed it. Is
Gentlemen.
it Carter Q?
Yeah.
I know you can.
On
bring
behalf
some.
of Planning
Yeah.
Commission, thank you for a very productive evening.
Yes, excellent.
Thank you, Amber, this is great.
And you too,
My
Chris.
table worked out just fine.
Yes, it did.
Yes,
Yes,
awesome,
it did.
thank you.
Heather, are we done?
Um,
Let me know. I'm gonna stay here.